Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to call to order the 12 p.m. Department Head Budget Presentation Meeting of May 8th, 2023. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Arias. Councilmember Weir. Councilmember Smith.
I'm here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you. In keeping with Council's resolution, the public statements portion is now divided into two periods. There's a period for items listed on the meeting agenda and items not on the meeting agenda. Statements for items listed on this afternoon's agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total per agenda item. Statements regarding items not on the agenda are also given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give them to the clerk, who will give copies to the council. If you're here to make a public statement, please fill out a public speaker card and give your completed card to the city clerk. We ask that you mark whether you're here to speak on an item listed on this afternoon's agenda or in a matter not on the agenda. Speakers who do not identify a specific agenda item will be presumed speakers for the non-agenda portion. Those speakers will be called during the non-agenda portion of the meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding items listed on this afternoon's agenda?
Mayor Go, we've received one speaker card for items listed on today's agenda from Michael Turnipseed.
Thank you. And while he's coming down here, welcome. We have a lot of fellows who have served just so wonderfully in our city. So thank you all, fellows sitting in the back. Are there any high school students or college students other than the fellows here? All right. Welcome, Mr. Turnipseed.
Welcome, Madam Mayor. One simple question. Since we're having all these budget presentations, would it be possible for members of the public who would like to have a copy of these presentations so they can go through them? Because many of the times the numbers are too small to read on the screen. So I'm respectfully requesting that you provide anyone who'd like a copy, a written copy, so we can follow it. And if not, if that's impossible, I'd like it emailed to me after this meeting, all your presentations today. Thank you.
Do we have any extra copies?
I think I seen a copy out in the lobby.
Yeah, we'll just get Danielle to make some. We'll get you did see some of that? There was some. Okay. I'll get Danielle to make you a copy, Mr. Turnipseed. And now, Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding items not on the agenda?
Mayor Go, we have not received any speaker cards regarding items not on today's agenda.
Thank you. And now, Assistant City Manager, Mr. Hallen.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, just brief comments, and then we'll launch right into our first presentation. With employee appreciation, I am grateful for all of our department heads who are ready to give their budget presentations today, as well as the fiscal staff and the budget staff. Very grateful for all the hard work that you're going to be able to see from their budget presentations. So with that, we'll jump straight to our police department. We'll go to city attorney and financial services. We'll go in that order.
All right, so we're starting with our police department. And you know, this is our tradition always. Conciseness gets extra credit, whatever that is. I don't know, do they get extra money for that? So thank you so much, and we appreciate you very much, Chief.
All right, then. Well, in the spirit of that, good afternoon, and thank you very much.
You may have all your money.
All right. I will, good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. Greg Terry, Police Chief, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you for what I hope will be just a few minutes this afternoon, but to share with you some highlights of what has occurred over the previous year and fiscal year, and then we'll certainly get into what we're asking for in terms of next year in fulfilling our responsibilities to the community. We have purposed to align our requested budget with certainly with goals of the council, but also the priorities of the public safety and vital services measure. And all of that going towards to address what is the significant needs and concerns that our community has within the responsibilities of the police department. And we purpose to do this by continuing with our mission statement to partner with the community to protect life and property. I'll start with just a couple of operational and highlights, and then we'll get into a little bit more detail. I have Assistant Chief Stratton here and Captain Blakemore, who will talk about, again, some of the budget requests, but also some of what has occurred over the last year. And then I will come back and get into the meat of our request for next year. But just a couple things to highlight, even though it is certainly a reality that our public, that our community has serious and many complex public safety issues. And we are working every day to address them. There is good news around violent crime in particular over the last year, and I want to share that information with you. For 2022 versus 2021, we saw a 40% reduction in overall homicides, a 49% reduction in gang-related shootings, and a 30% reduction in our ShotSpotter gunshot alerts. There's been significant effort and significant resources that have been devoted to violent crime in our community over the last several years. And Assistant Chief Stratton will speak to this a little bit more, but we've had significant partners in this, and he'll talk about that. Some of our community-based organizations that have really changed and shaped the way that we're approaching violent crime, and specifically working to reduce it in our community, to be much more strategic and informed about the process. So there's really good news around violent crime. Again, I certainly recognize that we face many other challenges across our city, and we'll talk a little bit about that shortly, and then talk about some of the things that we're doing to address it. Over the last couple of years, we've had several capital improvement projects that have been ongoing, particularly our pistol range. It was about a 2-year project or so, was finally completed and is now operational, where we are excuse me, shooting at it at the range once again. Our physical agility course, which is an obstacle course that we use for the application process, and then use through the course of the academy. We partnered with Recreation and Parks and had a facility built at Yokitz Park. And so our physical agility course is a permanent feature of that park, and certainly is added to the amenities for our community. We are in construction now, or remodel of the Mill Creek House at Mill Creek Park to be an employee wellness center. It is a reality that we cannot provide the levels of service that we need to, and that our community expects if we do not have a healthy workforce. And so we are investing in this area, and have had tremendous support from the council and members of our community to ensure that we have the resources that we need for first responders and all of the men and women who work in the police department. So this wellness center is going through a remodel right now. We're hopeful that it will be open and operational by June. Operationally, over the last year, due to growth within the police department in terms of the numbers of officers that we've been able to gain, we fielded a second impact team. An impact team, their primary responsibilities are those quality of life, chronic issues that are taking place in some of our neighborhoods and our business community. We were able to field a second team through that growth. Anticipating what our next growth, or what our growth is going to continue to be through this next fiscal year, we anticipate fielding a third impact team to address these issues that are important to our community. And one of our requests for a position will specifically be related to this coming soon. Organized retail theft. It is, again, an unfortunate reality that our businesses and our city is being impacted by this in a substantial way. So again, we used, in February of this year, we used some additional growth of police officer positions within the department to create a new unit within the investigations division. This unit has detectives and a police service technician dedicated full-time to the more prompt investigation of these theft-related crimes, more aggressive and thorough follow-up of these types of crimes, and also we're increasing our partnership with the local business community, and we're also participating in the CHP's statewide task force on organized retail theft. Just since February of this year, so just about 2.5 months ago, when this unit was formed, they've already made over 125 arrests. We've conducted 9 joint operations with the CHP, and we've recovered over almost $30,000 in property that has been stolen from our local business community. And so we are very active in this area, and we anticipate that these successes will continue as we work toward trying to change what is occurring in some of the environment around our business community and support them in a better way. Human trafficking is present in our community, and we are aggressively participating in different types of partnerships and task force with statewide agencies, with the district attorney's office, and over the last year we've participated in about 50 human trafficking investigations. We do utilize a community policing philosophy, which at its core is a belief that the public safety is a shared responsibility and should be that between the police department and our community. And we are actively working to increase and enhance the partnerships that we've developed to improve the safety of our community and the trust with law enforcement and the police department specifically. So one of these programs has been in development for about 2 years. It got delayed because of COVID, but it finally was enacted in February of this year, and that's a youth diversion program. Youth diversion program is eligible for juveniles who commit a very minor crime, but is their first crime. And this is an opportunity to divert them from the traditional criminal justice system and allow them to interact with and get support in a much different and more meaningful way to help them learn from this experience and hopefully promote better decision-making the next time. But this program specifically is run in partnership with the District Attorney's Office, with the Public Defender's Office, with our Kern County Superior Courts. The hearings are held in juvenile court with a real judge inside an actual courtroom. High school students within our community act as both the representations for the juvenile offender and take the place of, or act in the place of, the prosecutor. And then there is a jury of their peers that hear the case. And so it is run very much like a regular criminal type case, except the intent and the outcomes are much different. And certainly our goals are that this offender never come into contact with the system again. We've had 9 juvenile offenders go through the program since February. 4 have already completed the process, completed their program, and 5 other juvenile offenders are currently going through the program. We've already had one of the juveniles who was an offender and finished the program come back to us and talk about their desire to become more involved in the program, having learned from their own experience. Again, the community policing thought, the philosophy is another example of this is our community advisory panel and Community Police Academy. The Community Police Academy is a 30-hour course spread over 10 weeks where community members come into the police department one night a week and hear from different parts of the police department. They're able to learn about our operations and the types of services that we deliver. They learn how we deliver those services, but it also gives the police department an opportunity to get feedback from the community and understand what the community's concerns are, and also to develop a better understanding of the perspective of our community as well. We have fielded the Community Advisory Panel. That is an element that is related to our stipulated agreement with the Department of Justice. We began meeting with them in March. We have our May meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow night, we will present our canine policy, our proposed canine policy to the panel. And the panel's purpose really is, we meet with them once a month, but it is to be the community's voice as we make changes, as we make improvements in the police department's policy and training. These are all presented to the community panel, and we get our community's feedback. And we are still continuing to work on our agreement with the Department of Justice. Here's just a couple of pictures of the obstacle course or the agility course at Yokitz Park. Here's an overview of our range. What was different here most significantly, it was that it now is enclosed. It was previously an open bay range. This is a photo from inside the range looking down range where, again, a ceiling was put in there, a lot of sound and bullet trapping and different types of equipment that were installed to make it safer and also to reduce the noise and pressures of those that are using the range. This is a picture on the left is the youth diversion program, students going through training when it was initially created. And then on the right is an actual picture from within the courtroom. So you can see it takes place inside an actual courtroom, and juveniles or the the youth in our community are participating in every aspect of it. This was the most recent photo of our graduates of our Community Police Academy that graduated just last month. Spider Tech, you might hear us talk about this in the last fiscal year. 2022 was the very first year that we funded it for the full year. This is the this is the technology that automates notifications and engagement with our community when they have a call for service, when they become a victim of a crime or a reporting party in a crime. There is lots of confusion and sometimes mystery about what happens when I call, how long should I wait, what's the next step in the process. And this technology automates that process and engaging with our community. And so when you call 911 or you have a call for service, you will get an automated notification and an acknowledgement that your call was received. There's also a delay notice that you get if we are delayed more than 30 minutes. If you become, or if a report is actually taken in your case, you will also receive updates on the status of your report or the investigation where it is. You'll get information such as who the assigned detective is, what your case number is, how to reach them, their contact information, and then you'll also get notifications on what the disposition of your case was, whether there was an arrest or that it was referred to the district attorney's office and that sort of thing. And at the end of a call for service or an investigation, you will give an opportunity to participate in a survey. And the survey really does ask you those kinds of things. How was the service that we delivered to you? How was the dispatcher? How was your engagement with the officer? And then more broadly, how do you feel in terms of your level of fear and safety in the community? And what is your level of trust within the police department? I'll share with some results here in just a minute. Almost 115 or 116,000 surveys were sent out last year. We had just under a 12% return rate on those surveys. These are examples of 4 of the questions that are asked. Again, how was your experience with the dispatcher? How was your communication with the officer? How safe do you feel living in the city of Bakersfield? And to what extent do you trust the police? And these are scores for all of 2022. We've also, just in the last couple of months, begun working with the vendor to be able to get a little more detailed information out of this survey. So we are now, just last month, got the first returns. We are now able to figure out where these surveys are being returned, in what areas of our community, where are some of the service needs or service gaps, specifically within one of the 6 police zones. How is the level of fear in this particular zone, or what is the level of trust? We're now able to get that kind of data back from them so that we can be more strategic and intentional about engaging in particular areas of the community and to address the concerns that are identified there. Again, I'll just go through a couple of just highlighted photos. An officer working at Starbucks, certainly our Halloween event, a community event where officers were engaged with the community. And so we've purposed to be out into the community, accessible and engaging with them so that we can meet their needs and fulfill our responsibilities. And of course, the highlight of our event or our public engagement or community events every year is the Halloween. So this is an overview of the police department. The arrow there in the upper right-hand corner is where the police department is, and I'd like you to take notice of the line from members of our community that stretch down to I Street, wrapping around this building, and again going south down Chester, almost to the underpass. And over those 3 hours, we had almost 3,000 people, members of our community, come through the police department. And it is a really cool event. I encourage you to come visit us on Halloween and see for yourself, because it is a really cool event. All right, I'll ask Assistant Chief Stratton to come through and talk a little bit about some stats and some of the operational issues, and then Captain Blakemore will again come to share some operational information over the last year, and then we'll turn the look forward and get into next year's request.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Council. It's my pleasure to be able to talk to you about some of the operational challenges that we're facing within the city and within the police department. And first, I want to talk to you about some of our violent crime numbers, specifically as it relates to gun violence. Gun violence in our response has been one of the top priorities within the police department. And as we presented to you before, we saw sharp increases going from 2019 to 2020 and 2021. Thanks to the investment, council and PSVS, we've been able to have additional resources that's allowed us to be able to focus on gun violence. And because of a CalVIP grant, it's really been able to give us some additional opportunities to be able to partner with a variety of different community organizations to work on impacting gun violence. It's allowed us to have some operational resources to really focus in on things that's been able to help us to conduct some studies and find data that really shows us that it's a small percentage of people that are driving a high percentage of the violence, and really working on tailoring our enforcement towards that. We'll also working having additional resources to be able to offer to victims of gun violence to prevent them from becoming further contributors of gun violence. As we spent the last couple of years getting that in place, January 1st of 2022 was really when we felt like we had our legs underneath us. We'd studied a couple models from throughout the country, and was really where we were in a position to be able to implement it here within our community. And we've seen some excellent results. We saw a 40% decrease in homicides, 49% decrease in gang-related shootings, and a 53% decrease in gang-related homicides. I would love to stand before you today and have the police department take all the credit for that, but that would be disingenuous. And the fact of the matter is, it's really a tremendous amount of credit goes to some of our community partners as well, and working and being able to offer wraparound services while being able to have the additional resources within the police department to increase our capacity for enforcement as well. So that multi-prong approach is really why we believe we're seeing a strong decrease here. And I can tell you that so far into 2023, the numbers are continuing to hold, and it's my hope that that we'll be able to keep this pace, and that we can bring you some more decreases at the end of this year as well. Another area that I have responsibility over is involving our street safety here within our community. I wish I could bring you better news in this regard as well, but unfortunately, we've continue to see an increase from 2020 to 2021 and 2022 again in traffic-related fatalities. We have up here the top 4 primary collision factors as it relates to those fatalities, and that's an area that we're going to be spending our additional time and efforts this year, and I'd like to be able to bring you some decreases as it relates towards that variety of factors. And as the city is continuing to grow, this is an area that I believe is going to require a multi-pronged approach as well, but we are continuing to invest and grow in our traffic enforcement, our motor officer enforcement. I'm looking at a variety of different education campaigns and working with the city in other areas as well to see a decrease in this area will be one of our priorities moving forward as well. Additionally, as it relates to overall patrol-related response across the entirety of the city is also my responsibility. And as we look at some of these numbers here, while the decreases are modest, they are decreases. So we're able to see a decrease in our response times as it relates to Priority 1. Now, Priority 1 is our highest priority calls for service, calls that we believe are life and death and need immediate intervention to protect life. And we've seen some decreases in all areas. The 2 areas we saw an increase is in the north zone and in the south zone. I'm doing my math on the top of my head. It looks like about a 23-second increase in the north zone and about a 13-second increase on average in the south zone, but some decreases in all the other zones across the entirety of the city. So as, again, I'd like to credit the council and the citizens for investing in our community as it relates to PSVS. Having that additional capacity has really allowed us to be able to push some of those numbers down. And as we continue to have the academies that are running through, and Captain Blakemore will talk about that coming forward, and some of the efficiencies and areas that we believe we can invest in this year, we're hopeful that will see provide for some continued decrease. And as we continue to close the gap on our staffing shortages, that we'll be able to bring you some decreases as it relates to the Priority 1 response times as well. It's our hope that we'll be able to bring some decreases in the other areas too, Priority 2s, 3s, and 4s. But this is really an area of focus in protecting life at first. So This is a brief snapshot that we wanted to give you an update on what your investment looked like and the results that we were able to see over this last year. Captain Blakemore?
Good afternoon as well, Council. In regards to, similarly as Chief Stratton had just touched on in regards to our response times and how we evaluate some of those metrics, we also look at obviously our incoming calls through our communications center and what that looks like. And as you can see from the graph in front of you, in terms of the total call volume of 911 calls specifically, we had 271,000 plus 911 calls received in 2022. So a slight decrease, a little over 7% from 2021. And of those, you can also see the corresponding dispatched calls for service, which did increase slightly, a little over 3% to nearly 260,000 calls. In terms of what that means, in terms of how we measure and assess these incoming calls, agencies, law enforcement agencies traditionally look at a comparison with what is known as the National Emergency Number Association, or NENA, as a comparison for a standard of how these 911 calls are answered. And basically what that means is essentially that the standard that is set is that 95% of all calls, 911 calls specifically, are answered within 20 seconds or less. Traditionally, we've been a little bit lower than what you see on the chart here, and it is positive for us, the increase that we see in terms of decreasing that total call or the total call time, excuse me. Specifically, you can see that we were 85% previously and have increased that response to those 911 calls by 6%. So that 91%, over 91% are being answered within 20 seconds or less. So very close to the standard that we are striving for, the 95% mark set by NENA. Transitioning to department staffing, the total complement of our department is at 730, which is a combination of our sworn and our professional staff positions. That's a combination of 508 sworn staff and 222 civilian positions. Those are the permanent positions. There is a small handful of temporary positions that are also not accounted for in this chart that you're looking at, but this chart will definitely show you the breakdown of what that looks like right now as it relates to our growth and how we're aiming to achieve filling those vacant positions. Our largest deficit that we have is in the professional staff vacancies, as you can see, a little over 17% of the professional staff positions. There's a total of about 36 professional staff civilian positions that exist in the police department. That's everything ranging from your dispatcher, your call taker, your police report specialist, police service technicians you see out driving the trucks out in the field, and a number of other ones. And we're looking to fill those positions as quickly as we can. Our greatest deficits lie in our communications center, which is also a testament to what I just previously showed you. Not only are we striving to meet that mark that I mentioned by NENA and doing a very good job at that, but it also is with a deficit of positions in the dispatcher classification. So we're still striving for that, and I'll touch more on that in terms of how we're going to try and fill those positions as best we can this upcoming year. As it relates to the sworn position specifically, if you remember from the previous slide I just showed you, you were looking at about 459 positions that were filled out of those 508. Part of that we want to highlight for you is the last couple of years of police academies that we've had. Obviously, we've had significant growth with the inception of PSVS and the recruitment and hiring efforts that we put into that and the investments we've made. What you're looking at on this chart here in front of you is the actual numbers of the last 3 academies. This is the attrition rate within the academy. So typically you'll have a starting number, and early on in an academy you may see some separations for a variety of reasons. We typically are continually looking for ways to explore and increase that retention rate in the academy for obvious reasons, so that they successfully graduate the academy and then successfully become a police officer out in the field. Right now we're at 82% of our last academy in terms of retention, and we're striving for about 85%. Part of that, let me back up a little bit. Part of that is also attributed to some of the things that we've implemented and increased over the last couple of years, predominantly what we call the volunteer pre-academy session, where we essentially allow for about 3 months in advance prior to the academy starting, the incoming applicants for that upcoming academy to attend some physical fitness training, some defensive tactics training, get accustomed a little bit to what the academy setting will look like for them, so that they can become better prepared for the actual academy. There's no question about it that it is physically demanding. It's mentally challenging. It's emotionally taxing on them as well. So we want to prepare them as best we can without any secrets to what they're getting into so that they can be successful in their academy setting. Transitioning to another element of our communication center, our mental health call diversion program. You may remember from previous, this existing fiscal year, we have 3 positions that were funded for the clinicians from Kern Behavioral Health Recovery Services, assigned to the communications center to help with calls specifically related to mental health needs. We've had tremendous success with that so far. As you can see from the chart that you're looking at, it differentiates calls that were diverted to those clinicians, which ultimately save time from officers having to respond to those calls in the field. So we've seen a tremendous amount of success from that. We just onboarded our second person in February, and even with the full month of March, between those 2 clinicians that are currently assigned in the communications center, they've handled nearly 90% of the over 200 calls that have been deferred to them by the dispatchers. So that's a tremendous success. We are aiming for a longer-term goal of 5 down the road, which would basically put 1 per shift. We have 5 shifts total in our patrol capacity. And Chief, we'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, now we're going to take a look forward here, and next couple of slides will be specific to our request for this next fiscal year. But again, this for some information on what were the priorities that we used to form our request, and these will be our operating priorities over the next year, certainly to increase staffing. We plan to run 2 police academies within this next fiscal year. The next one actually begins in May. And then one in January of 24, and then the next one in June or July of 24 as well to be beginning. We're expanding in terms of staffing. We're expanding our use of the dedicated website that we have for joinbpd.us. It had previously been utilized for the recruitment of sworn staff. We're now expanding professional staff positions and utilizing this website to also increase the recruitment there. Obviously, one of our primary responsibilities has to deal with the safety of this community, and we're going to continue to work to decrease crime. We're going to continue to focus on violent crime, and you've heard a little bit about some of our strategies have been to do that over the last year. Again, property crime, we know that significant portions of our community are continuing to experience this type of crime, and I'll be back with you, I think, in a couple of weeks to actually provide a more detailed update and public safety update on crime over the last year, and talking about some of these categories specifically. We're going to continue to focus on the quality of life issues, those things that create fear and uncertainty in our community and that disrupt the quality of life in our business community and in our neighborhoods. We're going to continue our efforts and try to expand some of what we do to reduce vehicle and pedestrian traffic fatalities. As you saw, that they climbed over the last 3 years to really just unacceptable levels on our streets. And there were a variety of issues, and some of those are directly within our control, and some of those are we need better cooperation from our community and understanding the natures of the dangers on our roadway and how we can all, and it's going to take all of us to cooperate together to reduce that. We're going to continue to be there when our community needs us and to get there as quickly as we can when they call us. Priority 1 response times did decrease in 2022 versus 21. We did make some progress in that area. But when you're talking about your other priority crimes, it's still at an unacceptable level in my view, and I think our community rightfully expects us to get there quicker. You'll hear a little bit about, in just a minute, about one of the alternatives that we're working to improve our service model and so that we can be more responsive to the community, particularly when it comes to telephonic and online reporting and the option that we're going to be having going forward. Employee wellness, as I mentioned earlier, we are building or remodeling the Mill Creek House to have a dedicated wellness center. It is a reality that we cannot fulfill our responsibilities the way that we need to and what our community expects if we don't have a healthy workforce. So we're going to continue to prioritize that as well. And trust building, how our community feels about us. Do they trust us? Do they understand what we are doing? Are we addressing their most pressing needs? We need to be out into the community and more accessible. And we're going to work to do that by conducting zone listening sessions. We've already had 2 so far this year. We're going to continue to have community meetings throughout our community. We've launched a transparency portal where our community can have more direct, specific access to various type dashboards, particularly around uses of force that are already on our website. There will be many reports and different types of police records that our community will be able to gain access to and read for themselves what is occurring in our community. And then we're also going to be working to engage them more and to have more original content that we're developing in terms of education and different types of videos and other programs so that we can, again, to partner with our community. And we are in year 2 of our monitoring with the Department of Justice, and we're going to continue to work towards that. So those really do form our operational priorities over the next fiscal year. So here we get into some numbers over the next couple of slides. Our general fund request total has increased by just under 10% to $128 million. The vast majority of the increase in our general fund request was specifically related to the rising costs associated with our fleet, with risk management rates, utilities, and other contracted and just costs for services going up. We continue to utilize several grants to fund operations that are important to the community and that fill gaps between what our budget can provide. We're certainly grateful for the grants from the Office of Traffic Safety. That is a state grant so that we can focus on traffic-related issues. We'll get just over $500,000 grant there. The Remote Access Board is a very important grant because it funds 2 full-time positions within our crime scene unit that focus on crime scene processing, but also specifically on fingerprint processing and being able to identify suspects in different types of crimes. The SCLESF, the Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund, is a grant that we get every year. It's intended to be ongoing funding, but you never know when the state environment might change and that we could lose that. But we utilize these funds for frontline law enforcement equipment and training to enhance the quality of the equipment that officers are in the field with, but also the type of training that we receive as well. And then we also are receiving a grant from the Alcoholic Beverage Control to do some proactive work around reducing alcohol use by minors in our community and those businesses that sell to them. So this is the total resources request for this next year, with the general fund, with the public safety and vital services measure, and then the 2 grants that I just previously mentioned. So our total requests this year are just over $166 million. The next couple of slides will be some sworn or some personnel requests. I'll cover the first one, which involves 2 sworn positions, or actually a total of 4 sworn positions that we're asking for in this next year. The first 2 positions, a police captain and a police lieutenant, are specifically related to our work with the stipulated judgment with the Department of Justice. Over the last several years, we have built many very important performance development and enhancement systems to understand how we are doing business and how we're performing, and are we doing what we say we are supposed to be doing, and how well are we doing it. We have a tremendous amount of data that is available to the police department now through the various technologies that we use. And now with the stipulated judgment, it is requiring us to do certain things, but also gives us the opportunity to use this data in a much more informed way Again, there's some examples of some of the performance systems that have been built, audits and inspections, helping us to identify use of force trends, and really helping us overall to increase productivity, to take advantage of the opportunities for that are presented to us, and to ensure that we're operating in the most efficient way. The use of this data and the use of these two systems in particular will help us to come into compliance with some requirements that are in the stipulated agreement in terms of the levels of oversight that we need to provide over use of force. But the data also, the amount of data that we have in these two positions in particular will help us to be better informed, again, of how we're performing. Very often we point to sort of a traditional or default has been just to base your personnel needs on a workload. And that really doesn't tell you the full scope of what is actually occurring there. And so we hope to be much better informed about what our true staffing needs are, other than just simply looking at a volume of calls or a volume of 911 calls or the number of dispatch incidents. I think we can do much better to understand what the true need of the police department is to meet our community's expectations. So these two positions will, again, go towards providing the level of oversight that we need to be in compliance with the stipulated judgment, but also to help us to become truly a more data-informed and operational organization. The last two sworn positions are two police sergeants. These are frontline supervisors that supervise units in the field. Again, I mentioned that we just recently created the organized retail theft unit. We have taken a sergeant from another area of the department because of the priority that we felt this unit needed to be created and the timing of it. So it was formed and fielded, but now we need a sergeant to full-time be dedicated to it so that we can put the sergeant back in the other part of the department where they came from. And then the second, I mentioned that we were going to be fielding a third impact team. We have the officers for it, but we need an additional sergeant to supervise them in the field. And Captain Blakemore is going to come here in just a minute and talk about some of the professional staff positions and the requests that we have, but you'll also see some themes there that we are really trying to ensure that sworn personnel are engaged in full-time activities and things that sworn personnel need to be involved in so that we can more efficiently utilize the resources that we've been given. And so I'll invite him to come up and talk to you about that.
Thank you, Chief. Again, focusing on professional staff positions or civilian positions, the Chief hit the nail on the head in regards to how we assessed these and looking at what many of our current responsibilities are and what we are forecasting how they are going to grow in relation to things like the stipulated agreement and what's the best appropriation of that type of position or creation of a position. The first is a support services manager position. This specific position is, as you can see from the slide, we have a variety of areas within the department, such as our property room, our fleet and equipment and police facility management, our records section, our communications center, that are predominantly civilian staffed. In fact, just among those alone, we have over 80 civilian staff combined within those areas. But we have traditionally relied on a transition of sworn management. So a lieutenant that may do it, for instance, for a 12-month period, if they get transferred or moved to another position, another lieutenant would take over that role. Having a support services manager is going to be more of a permanent, for lack of a better term, permanent solution that is better equipped to help us operate in a more efficient manner in the management of those specific areas. And while at the same time, like Chief Terry mentioned, relieving some of the responsibility from some of our sworn personnel so that they can focus on some other specific areas related to their assignments. The second one would be the addition of a police technology manager. Again, similarly, like I just mentioned with the support services manager, the police technology manager is currently assigned to a combination of a lieutenant and a sergeant. And that's been done through a number of years just to try and fill the needs as best we can. But again, probably not the best appropriation of an assignment to that specific task. There's a lot of transition between those sworn personnel, whether through whether through promotion, whether through reassignment in another division, and it ends up becoming sometimes challenging for us to keep up on the nature of what goes into the technology section. We have a variety of things that go into that relate to all of our software programs. We have over 30 plus software programs that are specifically managed internally in conjunction with Technology Services Department. And we also have the maintenance of all of our hardware, technology hardware. So whether it's body-worn cameras, whether it's tasers, whether it's other digital devices that we have, cellular phones, things that we equip our officers with for them to carry out their assignments, we need individuals specifically in the position to help us manage that at a better cost than filling it with a sworn role. And in similar fashion as the technology manager is a police technology supervisor. So the manager, whereas they would provide the oversight and the guidance, the exploration of the new technology that's on the horizon, trying to help us stay at the forefront of what's best for within the industry for our department and for the service needs of our community. The technology supervisor would be more of the hands-on role, but within that same area, and providing the training, the policy development, those types of things within that particular area. Additionally, we have a police property and equipment supervisor. Currently, our department has the position of police property and equipment specialist positions, and they are staffed throughout the department in various divisions, depending on what the needs are, and they report to various sworn supervisors. So the intent is to create a police property and equipment supervisor that would be able to, again, funnel more of that to better and more efficiently meet the needs of our organization. The three key areas that we have are the fleet coordination of all of our city vehicles, our 500 plus vehicles that we have assigned to the department, the facility management, which we coordinate with our public works department, as well as the technology needs with technology services. Performance analyst, just as Chief Terry mentioned earlier, this is probably one of the largest growing areas of our department in the sense of the requests that we are getting regularly and how we are trying to analyze internal data for our own internal decision making as well as for external reports. An additional performance analyst will help us or will specialize in those particular areas, providing more intelligence for our decision making and to help us make better assessments with the data that we are collecting and increasingly collecting, particularly as it relates to things like the stipulated agreement as well. And an additional senior records clerk is another civilian position that we are recommending and requesting. And the senior records clerks now that we currently have, we have 8 that are assigned to our records section within our support services division. And an additional one will assist specifically, as you can see, with the supervision of our professional staff within traffic, impact, and SWAT. Again, same duties and capacity as our current records clerks, our senior records clerks, excuse me, but with the increased volume of oversight that we need, we're requesting an additional position. That position is essentially the first line, equivalent of a first line supervisor for our clerk typist positions in our records section. And retired annuitants. We have a number of retired annuitants now that provide assistance with a variety of needs related to background investigations and other needs. We are requesting 2 more specifically to assist with the Red Flex, which is the red light camera program, and the impound hearings. We've received approval to allow a retired annuitant to do so through the court system, the court process. To do that, for perspective, we have 8 intersections that are that currently have the red light cameras on them throughout the city of Bakersfield, and we currently average about 1,200 violations per month. So you can imagine that with the volume that comes in and the need for these retired annuitants to help staff that. Currently, that would relieve the duties of a full-time police officer that would then go, again, back to primary responsibilities in the traffic section. And as it relates to vehicles and equipment request, we are requesting a vehicle off-road vehicle trailer for our impact unit specifically. We currently have 4 vehicles, side-by-sides as they're often referred to as, 2 2-seaters and 2 4-seaters, and have the need for a larger trailer to provide assistance with long-distance travel and helping them service their needs as requested. We do get a frequent need for those types of vehicles, and as you can see from that pickup truck that you see in the picture there, to provide services related to the Kern Riverbed and other outlying areas that may be just more difficult to get to for our regular black and white patrol cars that you see out on the street. And so having the trailer will allow us to get these off-road specialty vehicles to those locations, those remote locations, in a safer manner. In addition to that, the trucks, again, as you see in the picture there, we're requesting we currently have 2 vehicles ready for, among others, 2 vehicles ready for replacement, the Explorers SUVs ready for replacement, and we would like to transition those to the pickup trucks, which would provide a total of 4 of those trucks. Those trucks are better equipped, again, similar to the side-by-sides that I mentioned, for the needs of the impact unit. Those are true 4-wheel drive vehicles, and they can better provide the towing and the navigation in some of those harder to get to areas. Outside services, we're also looking to contract services through some specialty providers. One is specifically is for our canine unit, and providing, again, an outside consultant essentially to provide services related to evaluation of best practices and training related to that unit. That's currently being handled by a senior police officer, so that would relieve the duties of that senior officer, again, like Chief Terry mentioned, to put that individual back into some more frontline services for the department. The Versaterm case service notes you see there as well is similar as Chief Terry mentioned as it relates to our telephonic reports and our online reporting avenues. We provide those to the community as another mechanism to for us to receive reports related to crime reports and offenses. This system is essentially an enhanced system that connects directly to our Versaterm records management system. Versaterm is our broader records management system that handles all of our incoming and report writing needs. So this system would, or this additional branch of that system would provide more of an automated and user-friendly approach for our community members that want to utilize that system. And lastly would be the communications, excuse me, the communications center records digital conversion. Currently, there are still, we've been struggling with this for some time. We are still utilizing some old records that must be maintained or required to be maintained. These are from the early 90s and even beyond prior to that, that are still on what you would see as a microfilm reel, essentially. And so those records are hard to obviously get to and need specialized equipment in today's day and age to, or old time equipment, I guess I should say, to retrieve those records when we have requests specifically, whether it be for a follow-up investigation, cold cases, or public record request. And we need a one-time request for a replacement of the system to be able to convert those records before, quite honestly, it becomes obsolete. We've been struggling to even find an actual vendor that can do this. We do have one, and that's why the specific one-time request is being made so that we can convert these to a more modernized format and not run into this issue anymore with some of our older records as it relates to 911 calls and other calls to the communication center. And as far as CIPs, a capital improvement project request relates to our emergency vehicle operations course training facility. What you're looking at is the picture that is over at 400 Watts Drive. It is our, what we call, again, our emergency vehicle operations course. That is approximately 22 acres, some asphalt and some non-paved areas that we use for our emergency vehicle training, whether it be through the academy or whether it be through our required perishable skills training, in-service training that's required by the state. What we are requesting is right now it is purely, as you see it on the photo, just an asphalt area, and we've had to work around and find other solutions in terms of when there's classroom needs, bathroom needs, even those types of things. Our personnel oftentimes have to go to another facility specific to address those issues. So we are asking for a modular classroom that will go out there along with bathrooms. And the total cost of that is estimated to be approximately $300,000. That will be, the request is not for that total volume. The cost that we're requesting is $175,000. We are offsetting the additional cost of $125,000 through state reimbursements, specifically that are provided for EVOC, for agencies that host the EVOC course. So we've already received some of that money, the $125,000, and are requesting specifically $175,000 to offset that difference of a $300,000 purchase. And I'll turn it over to Chief Terry.
All right. Thank you, sir. Well, thank you for your time, and that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Chief Terry, Chief Stratton, and Captain Blakemore. Very much appreciate your presentation. Thank you for the good work that BPD is doing. We see them out in the community all the time. I saw several of them on Saturday over the weekend working hard in community relations. You certainly made a lot of progress in moving forward and addressing the needs of our community. Before we get into the budget-specific queries of your presentation, just wanted to ask you to give the public an overview of the concern that keeps getting shared with all of us related to quality of life crimes and the repeat offenders that keep going into incarceration and out. And I know that we've had conversations regarding our challenges in keeping them locked up longer, but I don't think the public is quite aware. And so these are the questions that we get frequently. I think all my colleagues get these questions. So if you could address that, and then, just the concerns also about homeless persons committing all kinds of crimes versus criminals, and maybe just give the public an overview before we get into the specifics of your presentation.
All right. Certainly we'll do that, Mayor. Thank you very much for the questions. And we get them a lot, as you know, because it is in the forefront and in the face of our community members every day, whether you're a business owner or just a resident here. It is the reality. Every day, we're going to calls for service and making arrests or taking reports on incidents related to quality of life issues, vandalism, broken windows, even sometimes more serious than that, cars being stolen, homes and businesses being broken into. And it is a very difficult thing for us. As we leverage the different resources that we have to address the community's issues and spread our resources across the city, we're very much focused in trying to understand what is occurring, why is it occurring here, who is doing it, and that is our approach to all of this at different levels of the police department. I can tell you just in the last couple of weeks that we've arrested individuals who were repeatedly broke windows in downtown or burglarized people's homes. We took a quick look at 3 or 4 of those individuals, and all of them stayed in custody less than 6 hours. We're breaking into homes, multiple breaking into windows. We went there, we arrested them. So the officers certainly did whatever that they could, but these are individuals that are chronically doing this and repeat offenders in many, many circumstances. But just in the last couple of weeks, I can tell you personally that I know that many of those individuals were in custody for just a very short period of time. And there are a lot of those kinds of examples over the year. And so I want our community to understand that we hear them and we know that what they're facing every day. And we're doing our best to get there as quickly as we can and to resolve the issue to the degree that we can. But there are many things that are just simply, frankly, outside of our control, and this is one of them. We have a lot of conversations with the Sheriff's Department regarding bed space. Assistant Chief Stratton in particular meets frequently with the Sheriff's staff. And this is a priority for us, working with them to understand how do we get more bed space. Because speaking now sort of transitioning to the homeless question, we do have a large homeless population. But I think the data is proving out, and we are looking very closely at it, that it's a relatively small number of individuals that are responsible for many of the chronic crime, as also and also the quality of life issues that are just being that are seen so significantly in our community. And we're working very closely with Kern Behavioral Health. We have many co-response teams and partnerships with them to specifically address those that are most disruptive and that are causing these kinds of issues in our community. But going back to the bed space and the criminal activity, it is very difficult for us to meaningfully hold those that are committing some of these types of crimes accountable in our community when they're only in custody for a very short number of hours. And so, like I said, it is something that we're working with the Sheriff's Department. They've been a good partner for us, allowing us to keep some of those individuals in custody that are most disruptive and that are truly causing our community harm. But it is an ongoing conversation that we have with them. And I certainly don't want, while I understand the community's frustration and concern and belief sometimes that the police department is not doing anything about it, that we just simply don't care because perhaps an extended response time, and our response times are not what we would want them to be in some of those kinds of priority calls. But I assure you that we are addressing this at every level and really trying to pull every lever that we can to resolve this issue. And so what I would ask from the community is to continue to partner with us, continue to tell us and inform us and call us when these types of incidents occur. One of the things that I think is out there, and I'm concerned about it a little bit, and just in terms of data and not understanding where crime is occurring, is the sense of apathy and the sort of understandable perspective and feeling that people have just given up and they're not calling us. But I would encourage them to continue to call us. We need to know. We can't address things that we don't know about. And as we have a limited number of resources across our community, we truly need to know where these things are occurring. So I would encourage the public to stay engaged with us and to call us.
Chief, thank you. And just very briefly, the historical impact of some of the decisions that were made at the state level so that our local citizens can advocate appropriately. So are we having crime as a result of some of the issues, some of the decisions that were made, you said out of our control, but maybe more specifically, just be able to very succinctly address what those are so our public can understand?
Certainly. We have been impacted by different types of propositions at the statewide level over the last couple of years, 4757, AB 109. And while, again, we very much believe that we cannot arrest our way out of these kinds of problems, and there are certainly that not everyone deserves to be locked up for everything that they do in every kinds of circumstance. And I'm certainly not suggesting that, but it is impacting us, our ability to hold people who have demonstrated their willingness and intent to cause our community harm. We are certainly being impacted by and limited by the actions that we can take in a meaningful way and a long-term way by keeping those in custody that are causing harm in our community. And we're directly impacted by some of these decisions that are made at the statewide level.
Thank you, Chief. We know that many people do benefit from second and third chances, but there are others that just need more time to seriously think about the consequences. So thank you. I hope our public has a better understanding. And now, Vice Mayor, please.
Thank you. Chief, thank you for your presentation, and thank you to all the men and women of your department for serving our community and keeping it safer. Often witnessing the underbelly of our society firsthand every single day and still getting up to work every morning. And it's one of the reasons why I'm a firm believer in the health and wellness aspect of the department. And I'm glad that you recognize the Employee Wellness Center as a priority. I think that's an important initiative. I think you said it best just a moment ago, and we've talked about it for years now, that we can't always police our way out of many of these issues. Many of the problems that you're responding to, frankly, are societal issues and that you're witnessing the symptoms of major societal issues that need to be addressed in much more systemic ways. And so I think it's important to recognize that, but also thank you for all the work and creative ways in which we're responding, including those mental health clinicians, which I think are absolutely essential, and we need to continue to move in that direction. I do have some questions regarding staffing. We set out with the Public Safety and Vital Services Initiative with the goal of 100 net gain officers. And we did so because when we looked at the need for a 1-cent local sales tax, we were far below average. When we looked at the top 20 cities, excluding LA and San Francisco, we were about 100 officers below average. Where are we in terms of the net gain of officers today?
Now you're going to test my math. We have about 49 vacancies right now. So if you remember when we started the campaign to hire 100, we had at that time around 18 to 20 vacancies at that time. So you add that 120 that we set to get to reach, and right now we have about 49 vacancies. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 is what our net gain has been over the last 3 years.
Okay, and how do we get to that? And I recognize that we can't control all the conditions, right? Some people retire, they move out of state, medical leave. And so we lose officers. But how are we, or when will we get to that 100 officers net gain?
Okay, very good question. I wish I had a firm answer for you, a direct one for you. I would tell you that our next academy is beginning in May 22nd. Our next academy will begin with about 40 police trainees expected to go into it. We are planning for a January academy, January of 24, and then another one in July. Last year, we had more separations, attrition, than normal. We had, in terms of retirements and just normal people resigning or leaving, it was almost double of what we would see in a normal year. And some of those circumstances that you just talked about, people leaving the profession, people moving out of state, it's kind of a combination of all of those things, and then certainly some medical retirements as well. And so that has impacted us. There's no question that sort of the general perception around law enforcement has been difficult and tough over the last couple of years. And so we've been impacted by that in terms of the number of people who are expressing interest and wanting to engage in this type of work has gone down as well. And so we've had all of those kinds of challenges, but it's incredible, and I think it should be celebrated, the amount of how much gain we have made over the last couple of years, and hiring over 200 officers over the last couple of years, but then factoring all of those things, we don't have the net gain that we expected to have or wanted to have. But I think it is a real testament to the training staff in the police department, certainly the support of the council and our partnership with HR, and giving us the resources and the flexibility to really develop some really contemporary issues or practices to make sure that we are as effective as we can at engaging and recruiting those, but then also making sure that we have a good academy process. As you can see, our graduation rate has gone up over the last couple of academies, and because we're trying to focus and pull levers in every part of this so that we can recruit more, we can get them through the training, and certainly retain them. And there's been other efforts that the council has made to help us and support us in that area as well.
Okay, and I agree. I mean, I think the 71 net gain is a huge benefit to our community and should be celebrated. And we're going to continue to push collectively and working together to get to that 100 net gain. It should also be mentioned that the park rangers also was implemented as a result of PSVS, which enhances security. They're not police officers per se, but they are providing additional safety and security, which helps supplement the department.
Absolutely.
So going down that road, I think there's a lot of conversation about differentiating responses, and perhaps there are certain types of calls that don't necessarily require a police officer to respond. And there's an idea related to community service officers that perhaps we can employ folks that can go out and take reports and respond in a meaningful way, because as you know well, and many, I don't have to tell anyone in your department, many people in the public simply want a live body to respond, and they want their issues they want to feel like they're being heard and that their issues are taken into account. And so what are your thoughts on a community service officer program?
We are right now researching and developing, looking at what other agencies are doing and developing what a position like that might look like. Even in the request that Captain Blakemore shared, we are really looking at how can we better civilianize our workforce to make sure that sworn resources are really doing what only sworn resources can do. And we have traditionally had police management and supervisors in many areas within the police department that really didn't have any full-time sworn-related duties. They were certainly supervising and managing in very important units that do impact that. So like our communications center, our records, some of our technology issues, trying to transition that now into a civilian, permanent, stable workforce allows us to absorb these sworn positions back in the department to do just that. So we're always focusing and looking for opportunities to do that. A community services officer, I don't know if that's what it will be called, but we're certainly looking at, is there a position that can do more than what our police service technicians? Right now, our police service technicians, the men and women who drive the trucks, they take crime reports, burglaries and thefts. They report or they help investigate non-injury traffic accidents and other types of things that you don't need a police officer to do. But then, is there a gap there? There is a gap there, I think. We're working to identify that. What is that position where somebody with a little bit higher level of training and an understanding and capacity to respond to higher levels of incidents or higher priority incidents, but not quite the level of a police officer? We do believe that there is an opportunity there and are right now working to research to find what that position might look like and what those responsibilities might be, so that we can, again, have the sworn staff doing what only a sworn staff officer needs to do, so that we can reduce response times and a variety of other things related to our community's priorities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. One of the strategies we employed as we were working towards hiring additional police officers was the contracting with private security companies in order to, again, complement the work that we're doing as a department, sort of doing some of this patrol work. My question to you is, we didn't mention it in this presentation, but how are we measuring the effectiveness of our private security contracts?
Again, I'll have a little bit more firm data to come back to you when I come back in a couple of weeks to talk about the public safety update. But we are very much using and very grateful for the additional resources of private security. We meet with them every week, and they are deployed based on data, based on calls for service, based on incidents that are occurring throughout the city where that kind of resource can impact it. And so they are absolutely supplementing where we've gone and take reports where we think that there are some environmental issues around that particular incident or that particular location, that a higher visibility, more constant presence can help diminish that, but it doesn't require, or we don't have the resources for an officer to do that. That's an example of how we are utilizing them. And so, although I can't directly answer your question today, I will come back to the council in just a couple of weeks, I think, with a public safety update to really talk more specifically about what crime is occurring, what types of crime, and what specifically and how we are utilizing some of these resources to impact it.
Okay, thank you. A couple other specific questions related to your presentation. Response times are generally going down, or priority one response times, generally going down in all zones, yes, except for north and south zone. Do we know why? And two, how are we responding?
So two parts to that. Yes, we do have some indication as to why. I would tell you that the north zone is not as heavily staffed as in some other police zones, and that's based on the volume of calls. Data is one element that we use to deploy our resources, and so that is one consideration. It is growing in some of these areas, and so drive time, and we're being impacted by drive time and the ability, all of the things that are related to traffic, that we deal with them on response calls. But those are two things that we've pointed out to specifically. Now, the South Zone is staffed. I don't know what the current staffing level is and how that compares to the other ones, but I would think, at least in what we've initially looked at, is the South Zone is also being impacted by drive time. And the ability to transition from different types of calls just takes a little bit longer.
And regarding the 911 calls, and our goal is to answer 95% of our calls in 20 seconds or less. How are we going to get to that goal?
I think it's remarkable that we've seen the progress that we have over the last years, and a real testament to the men and women in the comm center. I know many of you have visited them, and so you understand the environment that they're working in and how difficult that job is. Over this last several months, 6 months, maybe 8 months, we've carried about 10 to 12 vacancies within the communications center. And so that is also a job that is very difficult, and we've seen some challenges to be able to recruit for. You might remember several years ago in an attempt to address this response time issue, a new position was created, the call taker position, that didn't have quite the responsibilities or the training of a dispatcher, but yet you could answer 911 calls, you could enter calls for service so that we could be more responsive to the public. That position was created about 2 years ago, I believe, and we've seen some real progress as a result of that. It's basically an entry-level position into the communications center. Prior to that being created, you were hired as a dispatcher, and then if you weren't successful or you weren't progressing in your training, then we had to terminate you. The new position doesn't have the same responsibilities, and so we've been able to improve our retention rate in terms of the communication center workforce. But I believe that once we get to, and as we work toward getting up to complement within the dispatcher center, we're going to reach these goals, because our complement will substantially, or if we can fill these substantial vacancies, will be at complement, and I think that is going to put us right at where we need to be for this call answer time.
Fantastic. I too want to commend the folks in our communications center, call center. They're doing a great job. Congratulations and great work to the department on the reduction in homicides. There were 36 homicides this past year, in 2022. I noticed there are 33 pedestrian-related deaths, and it's only been increasing over the last few years. It was 24 in 2021 and 15 in 2020. Almost the same number of homicides as the number of people killed, pedestrian-related death. What are we doing? How are you thinking about addressing this issue in a much more systematic way?
So again, really a holistic view has been our approach. We're trying to increase staffing, and so one of our requests was specifically related to bring in a retired nuisance back into the department to utilize for the red flex, the traffic citations, so that the officers that are doing that right now can go back into the field and continue the type of work that traffic officers do. So that's one example. When you look at the primary collision factors that we talked about here today, with speeding and red light violations, pedestrians, pedestrians in the roadway, that's a significant one that is really difficult for us to impact. Certainly, speeding is something that we monitor across the city and certainly respond to a lot of different types of complaints, and we can certainly impact that through citations, but it is occurring much more frequently than we have the resources to do. And so, again, with the pedestrians in the roadway, which is just compounded tragedies, because many of those individuals we have found are members or homeless individuals. And we know within that community that so many of them have significant substance abuse and mental health issues. And so we're also being impacted by this in a traffic way as well. So we're leveraging our resources and our partnerships with Kern Behavioral Health. They're out and engaged, the field teams are out engaged with many of these individuals who are walking in the roadway, frequently seen in the roadway, trying to be intentional about contacting them, delivering services to them. But then we're also trying to approach it in a very community engagement way, and so that our community is more informed, because we're going to have to and cannot significantly impact this if the community doesn't cooperate with us. And so we're trying to raise the level of awareness, trying to engage in the enforcement efforts that we can, trying to leverage the partners that we have that we know are contributing to some of these fatalities directly. And then also we're working with CHP and many of our other partners across the state to try to identify what are some of the other law enforcement agencies doing? And then lastly, certainly working with Public Works on traffic calming strategies and different types of ways that we can design and have impacts on traffic safety as a result of that. So we're really trying to leverage all of those opportunities.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Chief and Assistant Chiefs. Good presentation. Just a few questions. One is really a request. On the charts where you have, salaries, benefits, you summarize the budget. Here's the total. We're up 9.96%, that chart. In the future, and maybe we could get something supplemental, it won't have it. It would be nice to have a breakout of the components of the increase. It helps us understand it. If it was, 6 new personnel, well, that's obviously going to increase amount you spent. Then the major other components, health insurance up 50%, whatever, liability insurance, maintenance. If we could, what is that to? But we don't really know why it's up 9%, and it helps us understand it, and we won't be asking as many questions. If those things would be, usually you get a variance, I've seen reports, and then there's a long line for you to explain it. And if you explain them, then our questions get answered, because there is an explanation for each one of those, but it helps us understand. We get asked questions too. How come there are 49 officers down and they went up 10%? Well, we can't answer it because we didn't get, something we can remember. Well, fuel is up 50%, whatever. So that's a request for future, and that would be, Mr. Hallen on everybody's report should provide us, and we won't have to ask as many questions either when you do that. Second, street racing has been a particular problem in Ward 5, and maybe a few others, but it really has hit over the last couple of years. Has that decreased, and have you found successful strategies to decrease that?
I think the number of takeover events that we've seen has decreased in the last several months, 6 to 8 months in particular. If you remember, perhaps more than a year ago, it seemed like we were getting one of these kinds of events almost every weekend somewhere, and we're not experiencing that, thankfully. And one of the reasons I would tell you, I would directly attribute it to work within the traffic unit and the patrol division specifically. By communicating with some of our partners across the state, having some understanding of how these things perhaps are organized and information is shared. I want to be careful a little bit on how much I say about it, but we are seeing some success in becoming better organized in how we approach them when we have information that they're going to occur. Our strategies have changed significantly. We've had great support from the CHP and from the Sheriff's Department and some of our surrounding areas as well. And we really have tried to educate and let the public know when these kinds of events occur. But our strategy has changed in terms of our approach to them when they arrive into town and how we've addressed them. And as you can see, just over the last several events, we impound dozens of vehicles, sometimes make dozens of arrests because we've been better positioned to be able to understand what is occurring and how to address it. And so I would say, yes, we have seen the frequency of the events decrease over the last several months, and I would attribute it directly to that and the work of the men and women that have developed a better strategy, but it still exists. And although it is not existing perhaps in the same form like we see the takeovers of an intersection or a particular area, we are too often seeing fatalities that are occurring on our roadways directly related to speeding and a couple of individuals engaging in street racing or some sort of a speed contest. We are certainly seeing that at an unacceptable rate as well.
When, just as the layman hearing, that you impounded cars. Says, well, that might be a deterrent. Since you can't arrest, I mean, you can arrest someone and they're in jail for 6 hours. So I don't imagine arresting a big crowd is going to do you much good. But impounding vehicles of anybody who's there, is there at least a heavy fine to get that car back out so that there is a real penalty for participating in these things?
There is a cost to get with impound fees and that sort of thing. But I would tell you that it's not significant and certainly probably not a deterrent. I know we've worked with Assemblymember Fong over the last couple of years to have some new penalties at the state level. I think I don't think they engage or are enacted until 2025 in terms of suspending driver's license and some of those kinds of things. And so we certainly need more support and more to be done to enable us to have more effective enforcement tools. But right now, I would tell you that although there is some cost, it's not significant.
So we don't really, I don't know how much we control. It sounds like the state has taken most of the control away from us. We can't suspend licenses, I guess, unless legislature. We can't charge them $1,000 to get their car out. Are there any things we can do locally that make it really sting? Because a lot of these are looky-loos. A lot of people are looky-loos. Hey, let's go. Believe me, I raised a lot of teenagers, and I just, let's get down there and be a looky-loo. I'm just wondering if we have any, or if you could recommend us, not do it this minute, but later, are there any stiffer penalties that we can levy on people who, who we can catch their car in any way at all participating in these to discourage them?
There are, I do believe that there are, and perhaps the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that there are some opportunities for us to leverage some setting of fines or something like that locally by ordinance. But we've addressed this over the last couple of years or had conversations about it, particularly those that are present at these kinds of events and sort of being a spectator in things. And it's a little bit difficult for us with First Amendment issues and other kinds of things that come into that about how we're arresting or simply being somewhere at a particular time makes you violating the law. We've had to be very careful about that. But I do think that there are probably some other opportunities that we can have locally to impact the cost of getting your vehicle out, or if it has to be impounded in this kind of an event. But I would defer to the city attorney to ask specifically what.
Work with the city attorney and city manager to stiffen the cost of participating. Last question is, one of the new positions you asked for was another analyst. And you said it as, I thought I understood another analyst. I wonder, well, how many analysts do you have right now?
We have, I think we have 3 performance analysts now, and this is requesting of an additional one. But again, like I talked about with the captain and the lieutenant, specifically with our responsibilities related to the stipulated judgment, when you look across the police department and all of the different systems that we have, there's a tremendous amount of data that we have. And it directly impacts the services that we're able to deliver. It impacts how efficiently we're able to deliver those services and where we do and how we're performing. And we're operating in the blind in a lot of those areas. And so that is why we're asking for an additional one. Because we have so much data available, we do not yet have the resources available to understand it.
So it's pulling forth the data for you in a meaningful way so you can use the data that you have. Is that what this is?
Yes, specifically in this analyst will be for the operations division, which is our patrol division. And so they will be looking and pulling data, organizing it, assessing and analyzing performance data for individual officers and how they're performing in the field and how much work is being done and the type of work that they're doing. Is it the type of work that we want them doing? Are they focused on those priorities? And then bigger picture, looking at the entirety of the division so that Assistant Chief Stratton and the other command staff can make very timely decisions on resources, staffing, and a variety of other things that we just don't have sufficiently, in my view, at this point. But yes, directly, yes.
All right, thank you. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. great work. We're making progress. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The reduction in homicides is very encouraging, and I understand, that we focus on the small amount of people that are really causing the problems, and that's been very successful. And I think that is also what you're saying about these repeat offenders, where this vandalism or burglaries or whatever. And again, we need to keep them longer than 6 hours when they're known problems. And so I've been speaking with the city manager's office, and for a long time, the sheriff's office, and they now have more money, they're hiring more detention people, and that really, somehow we have to tie that together and hold these people longer, let them think about it, and would appreciate not only the police department, but sharing, city manager's office and the sheriff, I think, can do something, and we need some space there. I did attend a couple of your Saturday morning workouts, Spring into Action, and I think that's a great community outreach. And you could advertise it a little better. The turnout wasn't that good, but it's a great thing for the police officers to get out in the community like that. And as the vice mayor mentioned, wellness is important for all city employees and the whole community as a whole. On the traffic, I agree that it's not just the police department. You can do so much, and we're, I think, going to aggressively start working with Public Works on traffic calming. And 1,200 red light violations at 8 intersections is pretty crazy in my mind, and so people need to slow down. So anyway, I think we're making great progress. You've hired 200 plus. And, that we've known for a long time that baby boomer generation, was going to be retiring, and we'd be losing people. And it's going to continue to be difficult, I think, for some time to get to our numbers, but working at it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, to you and your team, thank you for all the hard work that you guys have been putting in. I know that you guys are doing a tremendous amount of work, oftentimes with less, staffing resources and new initiatives. So it seems like every other day. So I truly appreciate all the work that you and your team are doing. I put together a quick list of all the things that I'm appreciative of. So one is the reduction of priority 1 calls. I think that takes the cake. It is the thing that makes the biggest impact for all of our constituents that we represent up here on this dais, day in and day out. So I really appreciate that. Also really appreciative of Cal VIP, the Violence Intervention Prevention Program. We had a lengthy conversation about that in the Safe Neighborhoods Committee. And I can't say enough. I think that it is one of the most important programs that we have in the city of Bakersfield. Reducing homicides, reducing gun-related violence, reducing violence in general in our city. And I did share in that committee meeting that oftentimes when you have a successful program of this nature, one of the greatest challenges to these types of efforts is that oftentimes the funding falls away, whether that's state funding, whether that's local city funding dollars. Oftentimes when you have a successful program of this nature, you tend to forget when you don't see the problem anymore. And it's so important, the chief said it, or the assistant chief said it himself, we've got to keep our foot on the gas and continue to work towards developing these relationships and breaking the generational challenges of poverty, lack of housing opportunities, lack of job opportunities, and that's what that program's all about. So thank you for doing that. Reduction in sideshows. I appreciate the ongoing efforts there and the constant updates about some of the work that we're doing to work with our folks in our counterparts in LA, in Fresno. As we know, these are not necessarily always localized, but instead are some of these groups of folks that travel throughout the Central Valley, throughout the state, and I think we're doing a pretty good job there. also really appreciative of the mental health call diversion program. Can't say enough. I agree with the vice mayor. The more that we can do on that front, not only is it a better service and response to the people who are going through a mental health crisis, but it is also a better use of our resources and our sworn officers. So looking forward to hearing more about that. And the last one that I want to add to that list soon is a reduction in response times across the board. I know that we've done a lot of good work on priority 1 calls, but I'm very eager for us to talk about how do we also address priority 2 through, and this is where it gets a little arbitrary. Are we trying to really service 5 and 6 with sworn officers? And I know that we're going to have a full, lengthy conversation here in a week, or actually on Wednesday, I think.
Yes.
But I think it's so important that as we talk about these increases in budget allocations, that we also set some expectations of what are we going to get from these investments. And so I think it's important, and I would ask for you to give us, I'll call it a prelude, maybe even a sneak peek of what we're expected to receive and to hear on Wednesday, so that we can really start to think about what these investments are going to look like.
Okay, thank you for the question and the opportunity. On Wednesday, I will talk about the call prioritization process, sort of the handling of a call. When someone calls the police department, what happens with the call? We'll talk through how the details are obtained, how the call is categorized, how the call is entered, where we start tracking time, where we start tracking time. We have 9 different priorities. We'll talk through and give some examples of that. I'll report out on some of the response times for some of those, and then kind of talk about what we've done over the last several years to pull the levers that we can and the opportunities that we've been able to have to reduce our response times in all of those kinds of areas, certainly prioritizing the 1 and 2. And really, we'll talk a little bit about what the difference between a 1 and a 2 is, and how some of our procedures internally handle those distinctions. And then we'll talk about, again, perhaps the opportunities that we have from a policy-making decision or perspective to determine, are there some calls that we don't feel that the police department should go to? That's a difficult conversation to have, because you're really talking about a member of our community that is calling and requesting for assistance, and we're not responding in person, or we're finding alternatives. It will give hopefully some information as to what those opportunities might be, and where those opportunities are is probably more appropriate from a policy-making decision or perspective. Where do we want to exercise perhaps some of those opportunities?
Thank you for that. Like I said, I'm really eager to hear that presentation. I don't know that there is a way, but can you give us a sense of how big of an impact can we make with some of those changes that you're referring to, and some of the policy changes that, are we scratching off a minute from priority 2 calls, or are we talking about, significantly, I forget what the average response time for a priority 2 call?
A priority 2 was about 30 minutes or so across the city. Priority 1 is just under 7 minutes.
Okay, so priority 1, 7-minute response time on average. Priority 2, significant jump. And in large part, not to attack the Bakersfield Police Department, but in large part because of what the expectations are from prior councils and prior management of the city. We have not prioritized priority 2 as much. And so now we're in a situation where we have a 23% 23-minute disparity between priority 1 and priority 2, which is, in my mind, unacceptable, and which is why we're having these conversations. So can you give me a sense, how much of an impact can we make on starting to tackle responses, whether that's through a police service technician or a sworn officer, on priorities 2 through 5?
I will do my best. It's a difficult question to answer, and I would, again, my answer is going to be by talking about all the different things that we're doing, because it isn't the only priority or only responsibility that the police department has. We could substantially reduce priority one calls. If I pulled units from other areas and other responsibilities and solely devoted them on these priority one calls, we could certainly drive all of that time down significantly, I would tell you. But I think our community's expectations and priorities certainly have been also dealing with these other priorities, such as I could pull our impact team and put all those 20 officers back into patrol on shifts. That would certainly drive down the response times, but we wouldn't have the impact unit. And so I don't approach things generally as, a zero-sum game. It's got to be all this or all that. And so we're really approaching it from getting our comm center to full staffing, getting mental health clinicians that are in there that are diverting what calls can be there, developing partnerships in the field with behavioral health that are responding to 911 calls, that are the focus of those individuals who are sometimes violent. How can we get services to them so that we reduce those kinds of calls so that officers stay available for the highest priority calls and the priorities 2 and 3? The formation of the organized retail theft unit that can go out and aggressively investigate those that are engaging in this type of activity. There's sometimes violence associated with these kinds of thefts. As we focus resources to get those individuals in custody, we're reducing calls for service from those establishments. That keeps resources available for the highest priority calls. And so those are just a couple of examples as we look across the entirety of the organization and really working to try to leverage all of the resources that we can to make sure that we're meaningfully addressing all of our community's concerns, but specifically those that are most urgent and life-threatening, which is what a priority one is, to make sure that we are there as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you, Chief. I'm really looking forward to that presentation. Can you, there's been a lot of discussion amongst us on the council, and certainly the mayor's been involved as well. Can you give us a sense of where homelessness-related crimes fall into the priority 1 through 9 calls? I'm thinking specifically, I get calls from our friend Cassie Biddle over at Casey's Steakhouse on a regular basis about, customers being, assaulted at, on their premises. Where does that fall into the category of priority 1 through 9?
A priority 1 call is a life-threatening call when there's information that somebody is actively engaging in activity that is threatening someone. So somebody in possession of a weapon that is assaulting someone absolutely would be a priority 1 call. Okay. And we've had a lot of those. And a weapon doesn't have to be a gun or a knife. It can be a variety of different types of things. But those kinds of circumstances would be a priority 1 call. A priority 2 would be that kind of an incident, but that it got reported and the individual left, and they call us back and said the person is no longer there. That's still a high priority for us, but it's not a priority 1 because it's no longer ongoing or the person is not actually there. And as those circumstances change, the call priority can change, and calls move up and down the priority line all the time based on the information. So going back to what I said something earlier with the mayor is, it's critical that the community, when they are engaging in our services, keep us informed about what is going on. Call us when something is happening. Call us back if there's additional information or things have changed or the circumstances have changed. Perhaps you've called us and told us that something occurred, but the individual left. Well, 10 minutes later, they actually return, but you don't call us and tell us that. It stays in that last information and what that priority was. And so it's very important that our community stay engaged and active in our calls for service so that we can, again, there are a finite number of resources. That is the reality. And we need the best information that we can because we want to be there when our community needs us. And so we need to be informed. And so it's really important that the community stay engaged with us and keep calling us as more information is obtained or the circumstances are changing. We really need to know that.
Great. Thank you, Chief. I'll just make a ask that on Wednesday, if we could, whether it's through discussion or through your presentation, specifically lay out what that looks like for folks who are experiencing challenges with homeless individuals. How does that get filtered? What is dispatch looking for in when those calls are being reported? Because I think this is something that touches so many businesses, so many constituents of ours, that we should really be thinking through it, specifically through a homelessness lens. And with that, Oh, go
Just a
ahead.
brief follow-up. Happy to have the conversation. We'll be prepared to do that as well. But I would tell you that the priorities are set based on what is occurring at the time. So whether someone is homeless or someone is whatever, it really is irrelevant. It's based on the actual behavior of the individual and the crime that they're occurring or the threat to the public that's there. It's that specific to that. It was what the threshold is set by,
Okay.
or the priority.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. And to the public, we just want to emphasize what Chief Terry said about calling 911. Oftentimes, I get calls, and when I follow up with our chiefs, there is no call on the books. So please call 911 first, and your council members and I are happy to follow up. There's one more request to speak, Councilmember Gray, and then we'll take a break right after that.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chief. Thank
Good
you so
afternoon.
much. You guys have done just an amazing work in our community, and I'm constantly bragging on you. And we're just very fortunate in Bakersfield, looking at other cities, what is happening. We have our problems here. We've got problems to solve. I love your humility that you're willing to admit those problems that need to be solved. But I think we're heads and tails above a lot of other departments. So I want to take the time to brag on you a little bit.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We have great men and women. I agree.
Yes, you do. And you're only as good as the people that you surround yourself with. And you've done a great job of employing the right people. So with that, the other department heads that are here, I know you all are anxiously waiting to be able to give your presentations. But I just want to reiterate the fact that public safety is absolutely number one in our city. If we don't have safe spaces to live in and businesses can't thrive, we're seeing that all over the country where businesses are having to shut down, then we don't have a community anymore. So I appreciate the time that we've spent. I also was privileged to hear your report last week in Safe Neighborhoods and with Assistant Chief, and I was extremely impressed with the amount of work that's gone into that. But looking at our community policing from a holistic approach, from building trust with young people, I think that's so important. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of these younger people, they don't know anything about it. But when I was a kid, the police officers came into our classroom, you know, and talked with us, and it built trust. And I think that's really important, the things that you're doing there. Also, creatively thinking outside the box of how can we engage other community members. And I saw that firsthand last Wednesday of just seeing Stay Focused group and all these other different groups in Bakersfield that are partnering with us, using the clinicians in the call center, I think is vitally important. But I wanted to ask on that, how many, do we have 2 now?
We have 2. Are you
Okay.
talking about the clinicians?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
uh-huh.
have 2 2 working full-time right now. We have a
Okay.
third one that's funded. That they're actually an employee of the Kern Behavioral Health, and so
Okay.
they're working on the recruitment of that. But we have 3 fully funded positions, but we only have 2 filled at the moment.
So in this budget, maybe our assistant city manager, Mr. Halen, could tell me, how many, do we have another in the budget this year to add that 4th clinician, or we have?
No, we did not make a request for the 4th one.
Okay.
At this point, it's taken some substantial time for us to get the 3 fully funded that we have
Okay.
now, and so we're trying to be responsible about it and be able to anticipate it. But and I don't know exactly when we're going to be able to fill the 3rd one. So it's given some of those unknowns that we didn't make an additional request.
Okay, I understand that. So maybe next year we can
Yes.
talk about the 4th one.
Or as
if we
soon
can
as there,
fill
are,
it.
if quite frankly, I would tell you, if behavioral health tells me that they are going to be able to bring some on board, they anticipate being able to do that, then I will have no problem coming back and asking you for support and funding to be able to do that.
Okay, well, we hopefully we can meet that request. The impact team too, can you just real quickly share their responsibilities? You don't have to go into all the detail, but just for my own.
Yeah, the impact team is the team that's basically responsible for many of our quality of life issues that we are having across the
Okay.
community, whether it's in downtown or in a business complex or in some different neighborhoods, that the nature of the issues require that resources spend a little bit more time to deal with the root cause or to engage with a different partner. And so these are incredible men and women that have tremendous relationships and tapped into the different resources across the community, and really creative in how they work with the business community and many other service providers to deal with many of those chronic, long-term quality of life issues. Many of them are criminal issues, but this team is dedicated to solely to those kinds of areas, working very closely with code enforcement, and we have great support and partnerships with other city departments to do cleanups and do a variety of things that are related to homelessness, but other types of criminal activity, and the impact team is specifically devoted to this.
Okay, I know I've turned over some businesses to you in the past, so I assume that that's who worked with those.
Very likely, many of them
businesses.
went to work with the impact team.
Okay, great. All right, well, I don't want to belabor it, just thank you for
Thank you for
the men
your
and
support.
women on your force and what you're doing to keep Bakersfield safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Just one more thing, Chief, related to youth bicycle gangs. Been getting a lot of calls about that. What can the public do? What are we doing, and what can the public do?
Yeah, not only bicycles, but these small off-road mini bikes, and we're seeing those in many different neighborhoods. And our traffic unit is working on them. We're working specifically in the neighborhoods where we've identified people that are responsible for this live. So we're directly engaging them. But we're also just more broadly trying to address it whenever we get the complaints, specifically to address the law violations, the traffic violations that are occurred. But it is very difficult to be able to, because somebody on a bicycle very quickly can turn and get away. I mean, the number of them, it's really difficult from an enforcement perspective. And so we've really tried to focus on more locations of where it's occurring and why is it being drawn there and how can we impact that. So again, we're trying to address it on its face when it's occurring, but then really trying to figure out where it's occurring and address it more geographically.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, officers. Appreciate your service. Let's take a 10-minute break and be right back here. And the next presentation will be the city attorneys. It's always succinct. Thank you.
Well, I do too, so.
Yoga or whatever,
Okay. Madam City Attorney, thank you so much for your always succinct, clear presentation. Just such excellence.
Thank you, Mayor. Next time, I think you should put me first, and maybe I can be an example to those that follow.
Maybe we should do that, Mr. Howland.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council, Virginia Gennaro, City Attorney, and I will be making the 2023-2024 City Attorney budget presentation. So we start off with the organizational chart. As you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, the City Attorney is one of only 2 employees that report directly to the City Council. And on the right-hand side, it shows the internal structure of the current City Attorney's office. And what's important here on this particular slide is that the Assistant City Attorney position is currently vacant, but the City Manager and the Council has been very generous in allowing the monies to stay within the budget. And what that allowed our office to do in the past month is to hire the 5th Deputy City Attorney that you see there on the slide. And Matt Collum, who I believe Councilmember Smith has met, as well as Councilmember Gonzalez. Mr. Collum is devoted primarily to the water department. And so right now, the funds from the Assistant City Attorney position are paying for Mr. Collum's salary. But effective on July 1, Mr. Collum will remain within our complement, but his salary will be picked up by the water department and the enterprise fund. And the Assistant City Attorney position, again, will still be there, and the funds will be there. The benefit of this, as you can see, is number one, we're going to be transitioning not necessarily away from our outside counsel, but we are going to at least try to accomplish more of the water issues in-house. This chart is an interesting chart. It really just shows you where we stand relative to other cities based on population. And again, I think the key takeaway here is that we're not overstaffed. In terms of outside counsel, again, since the early 2000s, our department has relied heavily on 3 outside counsel firms, primarily Clifford & Brown. They handle your tort cases, your slip and fall cases, etc. They are under contract with the council and the city until July 1 of 2025. The same goes for Marta Rosen and Cohen. You're very familiar with them. They, again, handle primarily police cases, your civil rights cases. They are also under contract for another year. Colin Pierce with Dwayne Morris, his contract runs until July 1 of this year. When that is over, the Water Department, in their presentation to you, they are going to be amending or bringing forth a proposed amendment to that contract, but it will be at a lesser dollar amount than what it is now, again, because of the employment of the water attorney in the city attorney's office. All of the monies, by the way, that take care of Clifford & Brown, Marta Rosen and Cohen, they are reflected in the self-insurance fund, which is under the risk management and general government. So when we talk about accomplishments in the city attorney's office, we generally divide it into 2 areas, municipal as well as litigation. When you look at the municipal accomplishments, I didn't go into much detail here, but most of our time is spent in drafting ordinances, reviewing resolutions, in overseeing and reviewing and drafting contracts. You see the number of contracts every 2 weeks at your regular city council meetings. All of those are generally reviewed by the city attorney's office. Some of the key highlights this past year, as you can see on the slide, was the successful charter amendment. We've had a substantial uptick in the number of public records requests and the contract for the citywide fiber optic network. In terms of litigation accomplishments, despite the use of outside counsel in litigation, our deputy city attorneys do handle some litigation in-house, and we were able to close 2 state litigation matters without any monies being paid by the city. We did represent the police department in over 23 pitches motions. I will tell you that is a substantial reduction from years past, primarily due to COVID. And we do represent the departments on some discipline and administrative hearings. This pie chart you've seen before, it basically shows you where our office, the attorneys, they bill their time very similar to what is done in private practice, and which departments and divisions they bill their time to. What we did this year is Andrew was able to take that pie chart and he converted it actually into this bar graph, and so you can see a comparison between 2020, 2021, and 2022. And again, I think the critical thing here is when you look at the purple, which represents 2022, you see that increase not only in the police department but in economic development, which I think again is indicative of the council's mission and the highlights and where you have placed your priorities in 2022. So we're on track with where you're headed. Outside counsel, in terms of the federal, which again would be all of Marta Rosen and Cohen, really still seeing a backlog due to COVID. Most of the trial dates that were on schedule were vacated and placed in 2025, and some of the new cases coming out are being set for, if you can believe it, actually 2026. We did, however, have a full jury trial, as you know, in one case. It was a mistrial, and that date has been set for early 2024. The state is back on track. They're actually doing better than the federal trial courts. We closed 19 cases, and I'm very pleased to tell you that 15 of those cases were settled without any monies whatsoever being paid by the city to either the plaintiff or the plaintiff's attorney of record. So that was a very good result. And in the water situation, Dwayne Morris did represent us on the second hearing in front of the State Water Resources Control Board, and we are looking for a decision on that matter here fairly soon. So when you look at, again, this is just a snapshot of what we've seen in the past 5 years. When you look at the red, that represents the number of civil rights cases we've had in the last 5 years, and you can see they pretty much stay fairly constant. But the blue bar, which represents anything that's not civil rights, that's really where we see the peaks and valleys. And right here, we're enjoying a valley, so we like valley, so we're happy with that. When you convert those, when you convert that graph over again to the pie chart, and again, this is very simplistic, it's just a snapshot in time as of this March of 2023. Those 12 cases that we have can be broken out into this particular section. Again, the motor vehicle and the trip and fall, 1 pedestrian, and again, 3 excessive force cases. For our budget, the upcoming year, again, not much change, a little over $2.5 million. The significant changes, as I think Councilmember Freeman wanted us to point out, is really just the increase of a little over $102,000 compared to last year. And again, really nothing within our control. That was primarily due to the increase in salaries and benefits and a little bit in the operating fund. So the last slide, from my perspective, and I think from the council's perspective also, looking forward to next year, we're going to continue our litigation posture. I think it's been very successful. We're going to maintain our municipal services, try to continue to handle appropriate matters in-house as we have done so, and look to increase that. And then again, continue that recruitment for the assistant city attorney when time is appropriate. And so with that, I'm open for any questions.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jenny, for your presentation, and particularly thanks for your work on one of the concerns I've had in Metro Bakersfield and throughout the city, really, with regard to chronic nuisance properties. And that's actually my question. You referred to the third slide, comparable city survey of attorneys on staff, and you mentioned that we are not overstaffed. As we look at some of the pressing needs in our city, particularly as it relates to chronic nuisance properties and the need for the city attorney's office to really play a role at addressing some of these concerns, and that's just one of many different issues that are continuing to escalate in our community. My question is not if we're overstaffed, but are we understaffed?
Mayor, Councilmember Gonzalez, I really think it depends on what the council wants, what they're looking for from the city attorney's office. As you know, Deputy City Attorney Ashley Zambrano has handled now 2 receivership properties on the chronic nuisance. That's well within our, that's not going to require an additional deputy. I can talk to you a little bit about the community prosecution program that I think some of you were familiar with in years past. I don't think that's going to do it. I think you really want someone of a deputy city attorney caliber to handle receiverships and, again, whatever the council envisions for the city attorney's office. So right now, I would tell you, no, I think we can handle it. And if there becomes a point in time where we can't handle it, I'm going to be the first to tell you.
Please do, because it's my hope that we can accelerate the work, especially as it relates to receiverships this upcoming fiscal year.
Right, and again, as you know, a lot is required to get into that, which takes place outside the city attorney's office. But once that paperwork is ready to go, I think we've been able to keep up in terms of filing it with with the local courts.
How many receivership cases do you think we can manage in any given fiscal year?
A good question. I would tell you, though, a lot of that depends on the pre-work, on getting it to us. We are not involved in the work getting it to where it needs to be filed, right? There's a lot of documentation and a lot of notices that have to be sent out to the property owner prior to it really getting on our desk. But I don't think it's beyond reasonable to ask my office to handle a dozen receiverships without hiring an additional deputy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to commend you for not bloating your department and being a bigger tax burden on our, constituents.
You're welcome.
So I think that's important. And if anything, what I've seen, the work that you all have done, it's very thorough, it's concise. You get to it, and so I really appreciate the fact that you haven't bloated your department, especially looking at some of these other numbers, these other cities. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So
right.
good job.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. I have a superb staff.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Jenny. And I just wanted to follow up on the chronic nuisance issue. At the last Planning Development Committee meeting, I had talked about the eminent domain,
Right.
which we've gotten a memo on before, and the Deputy Attorney Sombrano requested that I make the referral from the dais, and so that's what I'm doing, is that, we explore further the eminent domain opportunities for the health and safety problems of chronic nuisance properties.
If I may,
Certainly.
Mayor, Councilmember Smith, we've done that memo. I'm certainly working with the city manager's office, but again, big picture, it is okay to use eminent domain, but at the end of the day, what we need is a project. And so, just so the council knows, if we're looking at an eminent domain on a block, that's typically what you do. You point out what that radius is, and then from there, it's really a policy decision or something from the manager's office that says, well, I want this to be fill in the blank. We're open to that. We're ready to move.
Okay, great.
So however it is that you'd like to direct that, I understand.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. And that's all. Thank you very much,
you, Mayor.
Madam City Attorney. And now our next department will be Financial Services.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor Go, council members. I have a brief presentation. I think the mayor used the word succinct a few times, so I will try to be succinct, but it still at least provides you with the key and pertinent information that's necessary to really understand the department's budget going forward as we plan and prepare for the upcoming fiscal year. So to start off, we'll look at the organizational structure of the department. Those of you who are familiar with our presentations in the past maybe have seen this before, but there are some changes there. We'll talk about that in a bit. But we have three separate segments within our department. The Treasury Division that handles taking payments from customers, handles the investment portfolio, also issues permits for business licenses, and takes payments for transient occupancy tax, and also reviews those returns to ensure that they're accurate and that the actual funds that we're receiving are what we should, and actually calculate them to make sure that we are receiving the funds necessary from those businesses. We have accounts payable, an accounting division that takes care of accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, issues our annual financial report and other reports required for the state or other federal agencies. We also have our purchasing division. That division handles procurement, helps departments settle on procurement for supplies, materials, enter RFPs to make sure that the materials, that the services they're receiving is the best value and are meeting the municipal code and the city charter as well. You'll notice, though, that we have one division that's moved out of the finance department. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So what we have here is, you'll notice that our complement of employees has went down by 2 employees. Our real property division has shifted over to the city manager's office. The desire there was that the work that department division was doing was really to focus them in, to relate to the policies, the practices, the needs of the departments, and it was really a central key service that we wanted to really focus them in on. So the city manager took them over to really, again, focus those acquisitions really back to the policies and the needs of the department. So it really was a more focused and more central division that we wanted to move to the city manager's office. So that's reduced our complement to 32. So we are now back to the level that we were really at between 2012, 13 and forward. But beyond lines, bar charts, beyond boxes, we are a solid team of individuals. These are all individual photos from this last year, activities that we have participated in. The chief talked about the Halloween event. We had a booth there. We had a booth at the job fair. So we are a solid group of individuals I'm proud to work with, to really work with the departments, work with the community to get the necessary work done for the department and for the city. So before we move forward and touch on goals and our accomplishments, I wanted to really focus in on how the finance department really meets the goals of the council. And in reviewing the 5 goals of the city council, this finance department really all of our work really focus in on goal number 5 related to innovative and efficient government. So when we look at this goal, much of our work really focuses on efficiencies. We're working on some major ERP goals and projects. Much of our work is related to well-managed finances. We recognize the necessity of this specific goal, and all that we do, our accomplishments and our goals really focus in and point back to the council goal number 5. So we'll talk about the accomplishments this last year. So we'll start off, some of you may recall that we have and manage the Retiree Medical Trust Fund. We continue to deposit funds as required based on our actuarial reports every year an amount. And we have over $82 million based on contributions and investment returns in that trust, basically funding an unfunded liability at 77.6%. The most recent actuarial has that liability at $107 million. So again, at $82 million and some change, we are about 77% funded in that specific liability. We will continue to move forward on that every year. We started funding it 16 years ago, and it was 0% funded. So in 16 years, we've moved up to 77.6% funded on that specific trust. The council also recognizes back in 2019, we issued a desire to address our reserves, and then back in 22, we established a resolution that laid out a specific plan on how to fund our reserves. We established a plan to have 2 months of general fund operating funds budget set aside in a trust. So we currently have that at over $50 million. We also, in that policy, discussed the need to grow our facility reserves. Currently, it's at $5.4 million. We continue to need to move that up. The goal in that policy is $10 million, and we'll talk about that as well. And then within that, we also had a policy to really establishing a pension rate stabilization trust. So last year, we funded it with $4 million. We'll talk about how we're going to fund it next year and our goals for next year. But within that policy, it establishes a specific amount of the general fund available funds to be set aside and put in this reserve pension rate stabilization trust. Again, this is related to that idea of managing our finances. These funds allow us to have sort of an independent amount set aside, independent from CalPERS reserves, CalPERS, I should say, investment policies. And that reserve also gives us a little bit more flexibility. We don't expect it to have the same level of success as the retiree medical because that is a closed system, but PERS continues to add participants. But again, the goal is to have that same level of flexibility, that same ability to address the unfunded liability that we have with our pension plans. We continue and we will continue to manage the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds. We received, as you know, over $94 million from the federal government. We update that every year. There's a recovery plan that needs to get updated every year. We issued that in September of 22, so we completed that. Really, it was designed, we have changes every year in essence of how we're going to direct those funds, but we continue to move forward, working with departments to really be in compliance with the federal regulations with those dollars. We do expect a review from the federal government, really focusing in on this, that they really want a outcome-based, evidence-based reports to show what the funds were used for, not just spending the money, but actually have outcomes and data to support it. So we're helping the departments in their various projects to make sure that they're accomplishing that and accumulating that information so that we can report those funds. We have a quarterly report that we send to the Treasury Department on this, and the most recent one was through March of this current year. We've spent about $15 million of ARPA. We have about $20 million either committed or actually contracted, and we will continue to move forward with the departments to continue to spend those funds, which have to be expended by December of 2026. And finally, we have the big project that the department continues to work with completing. The Enterprise Resource Planning project, basically contributed a huge amount of money and a huge amount of time to really go through the replacement of our dated legacy system. So we've gone through the design and configuration plans. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we move forward to talk about our goals. But the work has started in September of this year, and we will continue to move forward over this 18 to next 24 months. Talk about that now in our goals. And we'll circle back to the enterprise resource plan. This is the time frame for the ERP implementation. So by the summer of this year, we had some delays. We've had some challenges, so to speak, on getting this done, but we expect to have the financial and budget piece up and running by summer of 2023. The human resources and payroll segment will follow sometime in the winter of 23-24. Along with that, outside of the Oracle piece, there are also systems that we purchased for utility billing and permitting or community development related to code enforcement as well. Those are expected to be in place by winter 23-24 as well. I'll have a little bit more to talk about that as I proceed. Goals for next year, we continue to provide, as I talked about, the necessary financial reports. Our annual financial report that we issue received the GFOA award again for the 41st consecutive year, and we plan to file for that award again this upcoming year. We also have a required PSVS report that is in part of our audit. So our auditors go through and ensure that the funds for PSVS meet the 13 goals, that they are segmented and not intermingled with other general fund dollars. We also, as part of the audit, issue a single audit report, which is our federal report of our federal expenditures of grants. So all those things will be moved forward in the upcoming fiscal year, as we do every year. We will continue to manage the general fund reserves and the unfunded liabilities. So again, usually around mid-year, we look at the available funds, what we carried over, and then we move forward with the amount that we are going to contribute for that 2-month reserve. So that'll be a mid-year action this upcoming year. Again, we talked about that amount for the pension reserve fund. That is actually in our current proposed budget. The amount that was required, which is 25% of the general fund available dollars, is actually in our budget of $1.3 million. So that is the planned contribution to the pension stabilization trust fund as we move forward into the upcoming fiscal year. And again, we'll have the regular required contribution for the retiree medical trust as well. It's actually gone down significantly. It's about $4.3 million this upcoming fiscal year. And then we will again manage the ARPA funds. By, I believe, September, we should be able to issue an updated recovery plan. There are some changes in the framework that we presented to council back in September 22, so we will be updating that and providing council with the ability to review that. It has to be presented and posted publicly, so we do have to update that every year as part of the requirements from the Department of Treasury. I want to talk about the ERP just briefly. We are in the midst of the ERP timeline, so to speak. That star is where we're at currently at April 2023. Just so you understand the lay of the land, a CRP is a conference room pilot, which is a testing and a design phase. We are in the third of 3 testing to design phases for the ERP. After that, we go into what's called UAT, which is user acceptance testing. It's basically test driving the vehicle, so to speak, before we put it out and I guess roll it out to the public, so to speak. So the UAT is expected to start in June of this year. And then we expect to go live, as I mentioned earlier, summer of 2023. Again, that parallel project for the HCM, which is Human Capital Management, which is the payroll and HR piece. We just started that. That first phase of testing and design is CRP1. We started that in April. It's about to be completed. And again, we expect to go live with that specific segment of the project by winter of 23-24, hopefully by February at the latest. Now we're going to look at the all-important numbers. So I wanted to really review those with you. So this chart basically compares our actual costs of last year compared to the adopted budget for the current year, and then what we propose in our budget for next year. You'll notice the total budget proposed for next year is $4.3 million, which is a 21% decrease, but that's because of that shift of real property to the the city manager's office. The last year's budget, so we can have an apples-to-apples comparison, for the real property division was about $1.1 million, well, basically almost $1.2 million. So that, if you take that out of the adopted budget number, we basically have a level budget. It's no increase whatsoever to the budget. So again, as most departments have, the majority of our expenditures, if you look at the top section, is in personnel services, salaries and benefits. We did have increases in salaries and benefits over the last year, even when we take out the real property division, but we also had some cost savings specifically related to banking fees. We reduced some training and tuition-related reimbursements as well. So that offset that most of the salaries and benefit increases. The lower section breaks down the funding sources of the department. So most of our operating costs come from the general fund, about $3.6 million is in the general fund. All those decreases you see there are specifically related to the decrease of taking out the real property division from our budget. I did want to point out that one large increase in the off-street parking of $13.3 million. I did want to point to that because that has nothing to do with real property. That we operate in the finance department. We manage the 18th and I parking structure. And we continue to see increases in maintenance costs, of operating costs for security, and just the maintenance of the operation of that facility, janitorial and the like, because of cost of living increases. So we continue to see that ramp up of costs, and we're not seeing the revenue really meeting that increase in costs. If you look at our budget this year, we're anticipating a contribution of the general fund of $120 million. I'm sorry. $120,000. That'd be a lot. $120,000 is contributed from the general fund to really cover the overages in the off-street parking. So that $13.3 million, 13.3% increase is continuing. We have an parking enterprise study that we're moving forward with. I think the city manager's taking the lead on that. So the hope is that as we come up with plans on an overall downtown parking structure, we can right-size the operation of the 18th and I parking structure as well. So that is my brief and succinct presentation for you. I am now available for questions.
Thank you very much. It was brief, succinct, and very clear. So thank you. I actually noted one of your slides. That timeline is just so easy to see, and then your next steps. So really very clear on that. Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Randy. The return on reserves, what kind of return on investment do you get on those?
Well, we invest all of our deposits in, most of our deposits that are in trust funds are managed by PARs, so they get about 6 to 7% on those trusts. I was thinking of other deposits, but they get about 6 to 7% on a diversified investment pool, and I can actually send you that breakdown if you'd like.
That's good. The real property team is 2 people, and it was $1 million. Where's all that money go?
That is now going to show up in the city manager. You'll actually see it.
But if it's just 2 people and the cost was $1 million.
Let me go back. I'll go back to the slide. It wasn't just individuals. They had, if you look on that capital outlay line, that's $900,000. They had significant amounts set aside for property acquisition, and just service providers.
Oh, it was actually, okay.
Yeah, so that's the majority of that $1.1 million is that $900,000 decrease related to capital projects that they're not actually moving forward with this year, this fiscal year.
Okay, got it. On the parking structure, I know the city uses that also for some police and stuff. Does that go into the calculation, the use of that structure by the city? Does the city pay for their spaces?
Currently, we don't charge them because of the $120,000 contribution from the general fund. It's sort of like, robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
So we don't charge the departments for the use of that.
It would justify the parking structure is what I'm saying. I mean, the numbers aren't really there.
Yeah, those aren't actually showing up as revenue.
Because we'd have to use space somewhere else or buy space or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKeegan. It was so clear and succinct that there are no other questions, so thank you.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
And next, we'll have our Department of Human Resources. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Go, members of the City Council. Christy Tenter, Human Resources Director, will be sharing an update of goals and accomplishments and requests, hopefully very simplistic and succinct in competitive nature with my fellow peers for the Human Resources Department. Before we dive in, just a refresher, which is not lost on any of you, of what HR provides to the city. We are a centralized service, so we provide all generalist activities for all city departments, all city employees. Falls primarily into 4 buckets of work. We first have recruitment and retention. So that's the full life cycle of employment, starting with writing job descriptions, establishing positions, running all of the recruitment activities, looking at exit interviews, talking about data and assessment of where we can improve, where we can do better. So we've heard from the police department this afternoon on their goals for hiring, and we are in close partnership in innovating those practices and moving them forward. That's under 3 civil service boards who provide the criteria and the policy definitions for those activities. Labor and employee relations focuses a lot and primarily on our relationships with our 3 bargaining units, our 3 recognized labor unions. So negotiating our MOUs and having wages and working conditions as programs change and needs come about. We also look at diversity and inclusion initiatives. We look at different EEO standards and reporting, employee engagement activities, coaching and discipline, again, citywide. Training and development, looking at how do we communicate regulatory, development, leadership, skills training for such a diverse workforce. So on-site training, online training, different tools that we'll talk about in a moment that we've carried out to help move our organization forward, especially as we have attrition and new incumbents. Last, benefit administration and wellness. That is looking at all of our medical vision plans, the rate structures, the implementation of those plans, changes, processes, looking at all of our vast leave of absence and regulatory programs that coincide with leaves and employee needs. And then, of course, trying to drive wellness. Having a well environment that can manage different work-life balances is very important. So having initiatives and different platforms such as our Virgin Pulse app that can really help reinstitute wellness throughout the workday. So those are the big buckets of work that we're carrying out. When we look at who's doing what, our department, quickly, an org chart of 17. We can break that up on 2 sides of the house with our benefits and wellness on one side, our employee recruitment and employee relations on the other. You'll note there's 1 position in green. We will not be asking for any new positions in the spirit of a conservative budget this year, but we will be asking for 1 modification. We'll talk about that shortly. Knowing that we have 17 individuals, what does that look like? I would share first off that we have made growth. We feel that. It's a much needed relief in our department to really carry out the services and the programs of the city. As you can see, we finally were able to move over that hump of the 2021 and 08-09 years of 13 staff, and we're currently at 17. Last year, we got to a ratio, 1 HR to how many employees, it was 115. The Society for Human Resources Management typically shares out a recommendation that you want 1 to 100 ratio, depending on the programs and services. So we're still a little over that number, but manageable, and we'll see what it comes to once we have the approved budget for this year. So again, moving forward with those requests, and right now we have 12 individuals in human resources with less than a year and a half, either at the city or in the department. So when I talk about goals and accomplishments, I cannot undervalue or share with enthusiasm enough how much it has meant that we have been able to support the city in the way we have with so many new individuals and so much of the leadership time in really trying to train and develop those individuals. And so we're very excited to see what we can do next year now with a little time under our belt. So looking at goals and accomplishments, how they directly tie into our city council goals, we'll look at safety and resilience. Most important goal for our department is the police recruitment aspect. Chief Terry has already shared today what those numbers have looked like, but over this past fiscal year, we have supported 2 academies, hiring 65 new police trainees. Again, we didn't hear those numbers outright for our net, but that is who accepted and started the academy on day 1, 65 new police trainees. We completed year 1 of joinbpd.us. Again, that was a goal last year that really focused on, are we advertising the right way? Are we providing the right information? I've shared that at any time, over 300 jobs in California are posted for law enforcement. We have to have a competitive presence and a real-time presence. And our joinbpd.us has been a critical component in that process and that pursuit. Phase 2 is launching soon, which will now take it from just sworn positions and resources to all staff. Today, the chief talked about where we could have improvement in allocating civilian positions, support services manager, technology manager. Again, vital importance to the department to have those. We need to provide the right recruitment platform and resources for those positions. So we'll be launching it, more focus on dispatchers, more focus on professional records and things of that nature that have not been included on the website. We updated a number of new job descriptions in the department. We've expanded recruitment sourcing and job fairs up and down the state. Either HR and or PD are going wherever we can, whether it's local Kern County, college job fairs. But again, we want our name to be on the list and a visible presence in those opportunities. We launched ESOF this year, and we are using it now, starting to use now for background checks. That was another variable where we looked at how much time are we asking a sworn individual to be on the phone, review records, obtain records? Is there a better use? And so we were able to collaborate and partner with a new system, ESOF, that has a database secured that provides many of those opportunities and will offset that sworn time to doing other activities. In addition, for safety and resilience, the Park Ranger program was a key council goal and community need last year. Human Resources got that ball rolling once it was approved with council. We got the job descriptions, we did the recruitments, and by September of last year, we had all but 2 of the positions filled. Training commenced and we're live, and so we're doing great. We currently have 3 vacancies in the Park Ranger positions, just completed a recruitment. Last week, had over 40 qualified applicants that are ready and willing to accept the job when moving forward. So again, really excited that we're able to move forward with those positions. When we talk about the council goal of innovative and efficient city government, we believe we have a critical role and can contribute quite predominantly in this area, first and foremost with training. With the city manager's office, we were able to develop what we refer to as our empowerment hub. We had a phase 1, which was focused on our top tier leadership. This year, we rolled out phase 2. These sessions focus predominantly on innovation and efficient government. How do we make and how do we have a uniform messaging and approach to making decisions that are in support of goals and objectives and are data-driven? We believe that these sessions have now included over 90 of our leadership team. We'll continue to roll them out, but again, a great collective hub of us sharing information and needs as a leadership team. Human Resources has worked directly with Bakersfield Police Department in training initiatives. We've just carried out earlier this year a training initiative for all of our police lieutenants focused on business models, communication. Again, transitioning from that field to that more administrative role is a different transition. And so we want to support that in the best way. Spent many sessions talking about what our administrative policies are with our internal rules, recruitment. How do we marry those together to have the most effective outcomes? Citywide, we've looked at several departments in doing DISC, work style training, as we hire a lot of new people, and we hired over 200 last year. We need to make sure that we are communicating effectively and having clear communication and goals and objectives, because we don't have those 20-year plus or even 10-year plus individuals who know the job, know the lingo. So how do we start to communicate in a different way to have a more successful organization? And then lastly, we continue to have monthly Optum skill building classes, whether that's managing time, understanding priorities, just again, where are the themes that we continuously drive home to all of our employees. Recruitment is the core of efficient services, in my opinion. If we don't have the employees to carry out the tasks, then we are behind in the pursuit of innovation from the start. So last year we had our first ever City of Bakersfield job fair. It was a great turnout. Many of you came just to show a little support or give a appreciation for the job process, and we appreciate that. But we had a great turnout at the community center. We have tentatively scheduled one for this August. Due to those results, we had direct hires from that process. And we had good visibility in terms of our jobs. We hired 214 full-time positions as of today. We have 206 vacancies. We are making progress from year end. We believe that with our recent labor updates, we're going to continue to drive those processes and see better applicant pools moving forward. We conducted 168 recruitments. I'll just remind you that's with 12 people being here a year or less, but we had over 8,000 applications received. Those are our highest numbers to date since I've been here, since 2011. We created or updated 27 job descriptions. Having those seem routine and basic, but again, they're the core of what are we screening for, who do we need, what do we want. We completed phase 1 and 2 for the citywide comp and class project. The big conclusion is coming soon as we start to really look at what that data is and how it translates into our organization. But we received police and fire data, completed the fire process, and we also completed many interviews for about 300 employees for their classifications. One of our biggest wins was completing negotiations with our 3 bargaining units, and we are now under terms 3 years until 2025 with all those units, thanks to the council support and our collaboration with our business partners. Lastly, we have been a key contributor and many, many hours, maybe not always the most, Randy left, most succinct, but many hours in ERP updates. We are designing the human capital management portion, which are all the HR, basically employee data processes. Everything from functionality to security access, we've been greatly involved in, and a key individual in HR has been working on the change management process, getting our employees ready. We're also working on GovInvest, a labor module design, so when we do come to council with labor matters, we are able to have a more real-time and quick aspect to cost and provide data in those areas. Looking at our budget requests, fairly basic. Overall, there are no requests for PSVS. We're looking at a status quo budget for PSVS. We feel that what we have to support our current initiatives for safety recruitments and PSVS positions meets the needs in the coming fiscal year. What we are looking to do is one budget adjustment. So the first is a budget reduction of $5,522. We see that we can use more broad-based classifications. So where we had a higher level position, we're going to apply a Human Resources Analyst 1 position. So that's a correction more so to the budget that reduces it. And then we would like to reclassify a Human Resources Specialist to the Human Resources Analyst, and that will be an annual and ongoing cost of $14,000. I have noted that that is in support of the ERP program. The time and allocation and support for the ERP at this time has called out a specific level of position to be able to contribute on those calls and not have me and our HR manager on every single call. And so this is a true benefit and need as we see the ERP roll out and continue to need what we've been coached on more as design elements in the future. So if we look at all funds, HR does have PSVS funding for not only staff positions in HR, we have 3, but we also have funding for the different recruitment activities, specifically in police. So overall, with the general fund and PSVS, we're seeing a budget reduction of approximately 7.46% or $230,000. And that concludes our overall budget in human resources and what we have been up to and what we are excited to continue, again, with a really committed and excited staff to see what we can do this next coming year. And with that, I'll close for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Ms. Tinter, and thank you to your team for hosting that wonderful luncheon out at Yelkits. We received lots of positive comments about that. And thank you to all our employees. This is Public Service Recognition Week nationally, and so thank you to all.
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Your team is really the backbone of our city, and we really appreciate all the work that your department does for all of us, particularly as we continue to work on our goals related to PSVS. Oftentimes, many of those initiatives require human capital and people, and onboarding them and getting them through first recruiting them and then getting them through the initial process of employment and then onboarding. It's a lot of work, and want to make sure we lift up your department, particularly as it relates to our public safety job. So kudos to all of them. Please extend our congratulations and appreciation to all of your team.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
You bet. I do have a question.
Sure.
What sort of metrics do we look at when do we measure the time it takes for us to, once we recruit someone, to get them hired, onboarded, and into their respective department?
Wow, I feel like I had the questions in advance because I shared this with our senior management team in a meeting this morning. So I feel
there was
ahead
no
of the
prep
curve
for
in the
this.
class here. Yeah, I don't know. No, actually we do. We have through our systems, our applicant tracking systems, NeoGov, we have the ability to run reports. I was looking at last year on a calendar year basis for 2022, and the average was 66 days from the day that we open to the day that someone starts in employment. Now, those differ. Obviously, a police candidate is in the pool and we're doing continuous recruitment, and that takes much longer because of the multiple steps. But on average, for our full-time appointed positions, it's currently an average of 66 days. The system actually put a benchmark of 84 days based on some of the historical data and just other public service data that they have. So I feel that we're exceeding those numbers. Some of the restrictions are just purely calendar availability with all of the meetings and all of the programs that we have going on. One of the biggest opportunities that we have is to get calendar time. So when you are trying to do an interview panel with 3 or 4 people, we understand the complexity of trying to arrange 3 or 4 people's schedule randomly. That's typically where we see some of the time lost, is trying to get everyone in the same room. We have been looking at different opportunities of, can we do virtual? We get mixed reviews. Sometimes that can help, though, if people can do a virtual interview. But typically that's where we see any extension of the process, is where it's just difficult to get calendar time. But 66 days was the average last year to get someone on board from the day we opened the recruitment cycle.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And now Councilmember Smith, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Christy. First, I'd like to say I'm sure glad you came back to the city. You know, missed you when you were gone, and it, very important department, and you do great work.
Thank you.
Especially as, you know, we've had PSVS and we're gearing up, and the whole nation is having staffing difficulties, and we're working through it, I think, very professionally and very good.
Thank you.
So appreciate that. And I would just ask you, you mentioned the wellness, and I stated with the police that I did go out to their Spring in Action, so I was wondering if you presented that to all the employees, you know, and they go out and exercise with the police on Saturday mornings, or might be something to think about.
We can add a more general communication. We do a lot of the campaigns, or our Virgin Pulse of walking and different things, but I think that's one we could add in as maybe a few extra campaign points if you went out to one of those sessions. So
Great.
we'll definitely, it's a great opportunity to include.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. I don't see any other requests, and I see Ms. Woods in the audience. Thank you so much for your leadership also.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And with that, we now move on to technology services.
Good afternoon.
Well, welcome. You're going to want to make this extremely interesting, so you'll have so we'll all stay.
Well,
thank you so much. Technology department, you keep this going. Without you, we would not be able to operate in this era. So thank you so much.
At the very least, it would be dark in here. So I will make it as interesting as a technologist can, but I will strive to be brief, if anything. So thank you. Gregory Pronovos, Technology Services Director, presenting the fiscal year 2024 budget for the Technology Services Department. First, we're going to take a look at our organizational chart. Not much has changed. It has changed a little bit. Much like Finance had mentioned, there have been some consolidation of services with the City Manager's Office. Some of the services that were previously with Technology Services have been brought over to the City Manager's Office or in the process thereof. So you'll note that we do not have a dedicated media services team any longer. The services that remain with Technology Services, as well as the staffing, have been rolled into the GIS team, and they work on special projects currently as they retool in their new endeavors. And additionally, we are supporting the City Manager's Office during this transition. Here is a 10-year look at staffing levels for the department. You notice for the proposed fiscal year 2024, we do have a slight reduction for 2 full-time employee equivalent positions. Again, that's in support of the transfer of services that went to City Manager's Office, primarily around marketing endeavors that were consolidated with a new team that they're developing. This next slide, this is a new slide. It might be new to the council. This is the new format for presenting metrics for the department that was developed in unison with the City Manager's Office through one of their initiatives. On the left-hand side of the table, there are 6 identified KPIs that we'll be tracking on an annual basis. On the right-hand side are the statistics for those metrics for the previous fiscal year, the current fiscal year, and the proposed fiscal year. Of the 6 tracked activities, the first 3 are our day-to-day business items, which include projects, and the other 2 revolve around service requests that are put in to the department for various needs and repairs. The next 2 KPI values are from our annual CIO Business Vision Survey that goes out to all the departments. Those individuals within the departments that interact with Technology Services on a regular basis are usually invited to fill out the survey to provide feedback for the department and areas that we need to focus on moving forward. The final KPI that's presented there is our equipment refresh. And essentially, that is the equipment that becomes outdated over its life. We want to make sure that we're replacing that equipment during the year that it should be replaced for. And we're striving to meet these targets. The target for each of these KPI is 75%. For the sake of making the statuses easy to understand at a glance, we chose to use an icon set to represent the data rather than the actual numbers. Although we have included the actual numbers values for the current fiscal year in that second to last column there. At the top, we've presented a visual reference key as far as understanding the icon set. A green check mark means that we have met or exceeded the targeted metric goal. The yellow exclamation point means that we're within the 24% range of meeting that target goal, but haven't met it yet. And the red X means that we are in excess of 25% away of meeting that goal and probably are unlikely to meet it during the time period involved. You notice that on projects, that's where predominantly the red X's are. I'd like to say that many of those missed targets relate to the difficulties that Technology Services has with keeping up with the demand of departments moving forward, especially to do these new projects in addition to the backlog of projects we've had going into this fiscal year, all while maintaining existing systems as well as the new systems that we've brought online. Moving on, we're going to look at the accomplishments over the last year. We've had many accomplished goals over this last year, and I highlight a few on this slide. Internally, we've been focused on performance improvements and better data gathering with the implementation of our service desk model and work order system. Additionally, we've implemented some project management procedures to better forecast resource needs and scheduling of our projects. Also, we've begun transitioning to become more cloud-based on our application systems in an effort to free up staff's time to manage the technology and work with the departments on the use of that technology rather than wrenching on servers and equipment and the like. I have put up there 2 public safety projects to highlight. The first is near completion of replacing the age alerting system throughout the fire stations throughout the city. And the second is the transitioning of the regional radio system into the implementation phase from the procurement phase that we hope to bring by the end of the fiscal year to this council. We have also completed or nearly completed many projects around the city regarding security and safety items, as well as other technology initiatives for departments throughout. Looking forward, we continue to work with what started during this current fiscal year with the assessment of technology service by Moss Adams. We'll be partnering with Moss Adams over the next probably 8 to 12 months on the development of our governance models and the associated policies and procedures to enforce it. Additionally, with the ever-increasing project requests by cities' departments, we'll continue to increase our use of privatized services moving forward to bolster staff efforts to complete projects in a timely manner. We have 2 initiatives that will begin to gain traction in the new year. The first is the development of a data analytics program within the city manager's office in technology services, utilizing Esri's Velocity platform, which was approved by council during the mid-year budget requests. Also within technology services, we'll be implementing a pilot program implementation of an indoor positioning system. We're going to use that to track our mobile technology assets throughout the city facilities, and that will also lay the groundwork for possible future implementation of wayfinding services for city services, something that we can attach to the mobile app for citizens. Think of it as GPS for city services. If a citizen is in, say, City Hall South, and they're looking to pay their bill, they can bring up the mobile app, say, well, I want to pay this garbage bill. Where do I do it from? And it will be provided directions that we would create to go to the specific desk that they need to pay for that bill. Finally, we'll be focusing on the remaining vacant positions that we have within the department and looking to assess our needs moving forward. This brings me to our proposed budget. For fiscal year 24, we are asking for a budget of just over $17 million, not inclusive of capital improvement program projects requests. This is actually a decrease from the previous year by 1.5%, primarily due to the transfer of the 2 full-time equivalent positions to the city manager's office and a reduction in the number of equipment replacements for the proposed fiscal year. We also include, when we look at including the CIP requests, our increased ask increased by almost $1 million to fund those projects, although this is still a decrease from the previous year by almost 7%. Here's another representation of our proposed budget based upon operating area and funding sources. As more technology systems and services are added, those capital expenditures result in ongoing operational costs, and that can be visualized by the graphic on the right-hand side. The proposed budget comprises of 84% of it is comprised of personnel and operations costs. That seems like quite a bit, but when you look at the graph on the left, you'll see that 50% of that cost is funded through our internal services funds, the equipment fund. Those are the charges we charge departments for their services. And then finally, we'll wrap up taking a look at some of the capital improvement projects that we're requesting for fiscal year 24. There are 7 in total. 6 of them are funded for the fiscal year. The mass employee notification system is not funded for 24, but we do have placeholders for fiscal year 25 and 26 for its expansion. All the projects but one focus primarily on security or resiliency with the installation of cameras, alerting systems, or alarm systems. The one project for entitled City Hall South Office Remodel is a follow-up to the existing project we have today, the remodel being done on the second floor of City Hall South. That is just now beginning. And this is to build out additional office spaces for staff currently, starting with the department, as well as those additional vacant positions that we haven't filled as of yet. The intent is to build out that office space for the existing staff, specifically for those that are in the basement, moving up to the first or second floor, making room for the additional staff that hasn't been hired yet, as well as freeing up space in the basement to be used for shipping, receiving, staging areas, and equipment storage that currently today we're utilizing other spaces throughout offices for. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Pronovost. I don't see any requests, so thank you for addressing that, and thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
And next, we'll have the department that seeks to get people to spend money in Bakersfield. Lots of money.
Who would that be? Oh, that's me.
Welcome, Visit Bakersfield, Mr. Lyman.
Mayor Go, council members, good afternoon. I'm David Lyman with Visit Bakersfield. I always enjoy this time coming to spend with you a few minutes and give you an idea of what our successes have been in the past year and some of our plans for the coming year ahead. Brief overview of Visit Bakersfield. We're the folks in this funky little building down the street in front of the Amtrak station next to the Kern Veterans Memorial at 515 Truxton Avenue. Although it says Visitor Center out there, we provide assistance to a lot of other people than just visitors. People like human resources professionals, people interviewing for jobs, the new residents, real estate professionals, business owners, real estate investors, and referrals from all kinds of people. So even though it says Visitor Center out front, we really are the Bakersfield Information Center. We're funded solely through transient occupancy tax revenues. We receive no general fund or PSVS Measure N monies, and we are an example of an absolutely positively successful public-private partnership between the City of Bakersfield and the Greater Bakersfield Convention and Visitors Bureau. The board of directors, whose names you see here, provide us valuable counsel and community support and have been key to this successful partnership since 2007. Oops, go back. Well. We're also a division of the city manager's office. Now, this is new from the last time I came before you 2 years ago, and I said we were part of the new Economic and Community Development Department. And we had been moved there from being part of the city manager's office in 2013. I tell you this not to confuse you, but to reassure you that no matter where you may find us on the city's organizational chart, our goal remains the same. And Mayor Go said it first, to help people spend their money in California's 9th largest city. In the few minutes that I have with you today, I'd like to talk about the economic impacts of travel and tourism, share with you some of our successes from the current year, provide our budget request, and also share with you our work plan for the year ahead. But first, our organizational chart. This is by far the most simplest organizational chart you will see in this budget session, but make no mistake, we're a small group of people, but we make big things happen. Many people tell me, what you do is great. It's very nice. And I want people to know it's not just nice, but the travel and tourism is full of dollar signs. Tourism helps power Bakersfield's economy. That visitor spending creates and retains jobs and generates local sales tax and TOT revenue. And that TOT revenue helps support public safety and quality of life efforts and helps fund the city's capital needs. Here's a quick chart of the city's TOT since fiscal year 07 and 08. There was a dip, the Great Recession, a dip in the pandemic. You see, we have barreled out of that pandemic. And according to the finance department, we are predicted to hit $11.5 million in TOT this fiscal year, the highest it's ever been. And that little red line will show you that from the depths of the Great Recession to now, TOT revenue in the city of Bakersfield has increased 77.8%. Let's take a quick look at the direct economic impact from hotel spending at the city of Bakersfield. Let's use that $11.5 million about TOT this year. As you know, TOT is calculated at 12% of what people pay on their hotel rate. What is that hotel rate? Easy. We'll take the TOT amount divided by 12%. We get almost $96 million. You add the two numbers together, and we get the direct economic impact from hotel spending in the city of Bakersfield this fiscal year. Almost $108 million. That's how much money people will leave on the front counter when they check out of hotels in the city of Bakersfield. Almost $108 million. This is the direct economic impact from hotel spending. It does not include spending on what I call the 3 Fs. The 3 Fs of food, fuel, and fun. Let me give you a quick overview of some of our successes in the current year. I will start with our 3 savings passes. Many of you may have heard about the Bakersfield Selfie Trail. This is without a doubt one of the most fun things that we've ever done, and people in our office, both visitors and residents alike, come in and tell us what a great time they had visiting 12 up to 20 of our unique locations in Bakersfield, and they win a prize. Since we kicked it off, we've had more than 1,300 check-ins and more than 100 prize redemptions. That's a whole lot of Bakersfield swag out and about. We've also kicked off the Bakersfield Family Fun Pass. We have 15 locations, family-friendly locations throughout Bakersfield with 173 signups. Our granddaddy is the Brewery Trail. We started this off as the Bakersfield Brewery Trail with 7 locations. It was so popular, we have expanded it to 11 locations in Bakersfield, plus locations in Taft, Tehachapi, and Kernville. We now call it the Bakersfield Kern County Brewery Trail. We have had more than 1,000 pass holders, more than 200 prize redemptions, and we have had more than 2,400 check-ins from visitors as far away as Italy, France, Portugal, and throughout the United States, spending their money in Bakersfield. After a long wait, I'm also happy to tell you we have seen the return of large events to Bakersfield this last year. We'll start off with going back to February of this year with the World Ag Expo in Tulare. You might say, why do we care about the World Ag Expo in Tulare? Because the World Ag Expo in Tulare attracts visitors from throughout the world, and Tulare simply does not have enough hotel rooms. So many of those visitors from throughout the world fly into and stay in Fresno and Bakersfield. Here's the comparison between this year and last year. We look at 3 KPIs in the hotel industry: occupancy, ADR, which is average daily rate charged by hotels, and RevPAR, revenue per available room. Each of those key indicators was up significantly over the same period the year before. The next week was the return of CIF Boys and Girls High School Wrestling at Mechanics Bank Arena. It's the last weekend in February. It's always CIF Wrestling. Now, this was one of those wacky weather weekends that we had, where people were predicted, they were able to get into Bakersfield, but the chances are the passes were going to be closed. And just before it started, we saw hotel cancellations. So we did see a great reduction in occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR this year. However, our friends at the arena tell us that attendance at the event itself was up more than 27%. The next weekend, first weekend in March, that's always March Meet at Famosa Drag Strip. This was another one of those wacky weather weekends. One of the days was rained out. They had to move it to an extra day. But we saw occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR all up significantly from the year before. We're not finished yet. The 4th week, we had the Golden State Nationals at Metro BMX. This ended up being the largest BMX Nationals in the U.S. this year and the largest event ever held at Metro BMX in Bakersfield. The occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR all were up significantly. That was just 4 weeks. As they said in the good book, on the 5th week, we rested. We've also sponsored several other events throughout the year, October Classics at Kern County Raceway Park. Because we are have a lot of raceways, we bill ourselves as the racing capital of California. At the end of April, we had the return of the Western Street Rod Nationals, one of our granddaddy events. This has been here 40 plus years at the Kern County Fairgrounds. We are so excited to announce that we are having the return of the Jehovah's Witnesses Convention this year. 5 weekends, June and July of this year. They will be at Mechanics Bank Arena. The first time they've been here since 2019. They took the last 3 years off because of the pandemic. In the past, each of these conventions attracted about 6,000 attendees. That's 6,000 per weekend. We also have seen a number of softball, soccer, and baseball tournaments return to Bakersfield, playing throughout the city. Now, many of these events just don't happen They are because our sales crew is out selling Bakersfield. This is a map of all the trade shows and vendor showcases that Visit Bakersfield sales crew has been attending this last year. Because of this, we have had 7 on-site visits from event planners in Bakersfield this year, the most we've ever had. We fly them out, we show them facilities, and I expect in a very soon council meeting, you will be getting an agreement with one of these to host a very large convention, a sports event. We also kicked off our revised visitor's guide, our official Bakersfield Insider's Guide. We went through our 30,000 copies really quickly. We had to do a second run, and they are now, you will see them in most hotels throughout Bakersfield in stacks that look like this. Bakersfield has also been very fortunate to appear in a number of magazines, national and international. I'm clicking through here that we have been in. This last one, we actually made on the cover of Food and Travel magazine, winter 2023. We also sell swag, Bakersfield merch. You can get it at our office, t-shirts, hats, mugs, golf balls, bags. We've also seen a tremendous increase in our social media presence across several platforms. We hired a new firm in October, Cypress Avenue, and since October, we have seen our post reach increase 128% on both Facebook and Instagram. Our engagement rate has increased from 4.95% to 6.73%. Our Instagram followers have increased 1,735, and just so you know, that's 34% of our total Instagram followers just came on in the last 6 months. And also, we have seen growth of all of this growth is 100% organic. We have not taken out any ads. This has all been because of our current vendor, and we're very, very pleased with them. So, with that as a background, here's our budget request. Our budget request this year is $1,116,160. Broken down, salaries and benefits, $574,964. That's a reduction of just under 2%. Our operating budget is flat to the dollar, $541,196, for a total again of $1,116,160, which is a reduction of about 1%. Here's what we plan for the coming year ahead. We're going to grow Visit Bakersfield's social media presence, as I mentioned to you before, across additional platforms. We are going to continue to promote and create savings passes. In addition to promoting the 3 we have, we plan on announcing a 4th one approximately June 1st. We will also create a GPS-based audio driving tour. We have a driving tour now. It's printed. If you're by yourself, it's kind of hard to follow along and drive at the same time. So we're going to have a GPS-based audio driving tour. And lastly, we will continue to attend trade shows to promote Bakersfield as a meeting and event destination. In closing, you know that Bakersfield is the 52nd largest city by population in the United States, larger than places like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or St. Louis, Missouri. But when we look at the size of each city's destination marketing organization, Explore St. Louis has 61 employees, Visit Pittsburgh has 43, and Visit Bakersfield has 4. Today, May 8th, 2 of those 4 are out of town selling Bakersfield. The 3rd is in front of you making the budget presentation. That leaves 1. I don't leave just 1 person in the office for security purposes, so I had to borrow someone from another department, another building, to provide coverage. If there's only one thing you take away from my presentation today, and I said it earlier at the start of my presentation, I hope it will be this. We're a small group of people, but we make big things happen. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you the crew of Visit Bakersfield. Andrea Marroquin, she's our guest services representative, otherwise known as our director of first impressions. Evangelina Medina, she's our senior sales representative. You saw her a few slides ago at our booth in Oklahoma City. Matt Billingsley, he's our sales manager. He holds the Distinguished Sports Training Specialist designation from the National Tourism and Sports Association. These are the people that do the hard work. And they do the heavy lifting, and they allow me to come before you and share just a few of our many successes in promoting Bakersfield as a place for people to come for a day, for a week, for a lifetime. And yes, a place to spend their money. Thank you for your kind attention this afternoon, and I'm happy to chat about anything you may wish.
Thank you, Mr. Lyman and team, for making big things happen with your small, mighty, and effective crew. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Lyman, for your presentation today, and to your team for putting Bakersfield's best foot forward and making us look really, really good. A couple questions. One, you mentioned your team has visited 12 trade shows and vendor showcases throughout the country over the last year, and we've had 7 on-site visits from possible event planners. My question to you is, what sort of amenities or facilities are they looking for, and what are some things that we might look at in the future to be competitive at bringing additional events to Bakersfield?
Okay, thank you. Mayor Go, Vice Mayor Gonzalez, thank you for that question. Before they come here, they've already whittled through the process and say, this is one of our top candidates. So we come to, primarily they're sports, and they would like to look at our venues. So they look at the venues, and they want to make sure that those venues have the specific things that they're looking for, whether it's parking, whether it's a hotel close to their facilities. Your question is, what could we do better? I would love to have more hotel rooms. When there are conventions, I would love to have more hotel rooms near the convention center. I don't know what we can do, but I would love to have more that are nearby, because we lose out a lot of events when the question is, how many rooms are within walking distance of the meeting location? We have a fantastic facility here. The rooms are elsewhere. That would be one. Air transportation. I don't know what we can do about that. We have great air transportation, but you can't fly here from anywhere in California except San Francisco. The good thing is we are in the central, so for the drive market, for people like CIF Wrestling, when they pop all the kids in the van, we're central. But we lose out on those that require air transportation, especially coming from other states, because they might have to hop several times, and if they don't, the cost is significant. Those are the 2 things that come to mind. But the fact that we've had 7, more than we have already, I think speaks to the quality of our venues here, and the fact that people are interested, and by having those sales crew out there, Bakersfield's coming to these people's attention that they may not have otherwise.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Councilmember Gray.
So yes, I know him as David, so I apologize for not speaking to you as
That's okay,
Doctor.
Councilmember Gray.
We go back. But anyway, I do appreciate the work that you're doing, and to see again you and the city attorney's office, keeping the bloated, employee ratio down is awesome, because that's important. So you all are working hard, you're doing a good job, and it just proves how efficient people can be when they just roll up their sleeves and get busy about it and are diligent and apply careful planning to what you're doing. And so you're doing a great job of managing your department. Appreciate it, and your team. And I love your caricatures at the end. Show such creativity again. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I will pass your comments along to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray, and thank you, Mr. Lyman.
Thank you, Mayor.
And now, Assistant City Manager, Gary Helen.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to have our budget officer, Mario Roscoe, give us our presentation.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Today I will be presenting the legislative and general government fiscal year 23-24 proposed budget. And first, I'll start off with the legislative mayor's office and city council budget. What you're seeing here is the proposed budget for the mayor's office. That top line there shows a 9.5% increase for the budget this year at $183,910, a difference of $16,000. Roughly that's for the upcoming, or to budget for the U.S. Conference of Mayors and travel expenses related with that. For city council increases, the proposed budget is $350,832, with the difference being $45,639. The difference there really is we budgeted a flat budget, but the difference really is due to the increase in workers' compensation rates, risk rates, as well as some additional funds for the League of California Cities and travel expenses, as well as a small increase for materials and supplies for the City Council. And there you have the picture and map of the City Council members and the different wards, explaining a little bit about when the council meets on the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month, as well as the various standing committees that the council is on, and the important work that you do addressing important issues and topics, top priorities, innovative and efficient government issues, reviewing policies that then you bring forward here to the City Council and in front of your peers to make recommendations and voting on. The Executive Department, City Manager's Office, sometimes we think, what exactly is it? Well, City Manager's Office continues to grow and diversify itself on an annual basis. This year, they're from going clockwise. You have Visit Bakersfield, which is now back in our department. You have the Cal VIP staff, Homeless Services, which was moved in from Economic and Community Development, the City Clerk's Office, Risk Management, and these various divisions, accomplishments for 22-23, maintaining services and programs, expanding the city's violence and intervention prevention efforts, coordinating the Clean City teams. We've implemented some major initiatives, and we have the Youth Jobs and Internships program that has been a tremendous help for city departments and staffing to be able to have them do some really important work that allows city staff to focus on bigger projects and really spending their efforts and their time on more important and bigger topics, bigger projects. Your next slide here is the Executive Department budget. Some notable items driving increases. As you've heard from other departments, we've had 6 positions transferred from other departments into the City Manager's Office, and I'll explain here in the next couple slides as to why the City Manager's Office has gone from $3 million to $10.9 million. You'll be able to clearly see how the impact of those positions being moved from technology services, homeless services, and finance over to our department there. City Clerk's Office is relatively flat with a 4% increase with a fiscal year 23-24 budget of $1,012,974. And Risk Management, they have had a tremendous increase in their rates, and that's based on the actuarial reports that the city receives showing what we should be budgeting at, the number of employees that the city has, as well as property insurance and claims costs, workers' compensation insurance increases. And one last significant change that's going to be driving the increase will be 4 new proposed positions within the City Manager's Office to really focus on the Oracle Enterprise Resource Planning system and ensuring that the success of the implementation and system moving forward. So on the positions that I mentioned that have been transferred into the City Manager's Office, we'll first hit the Homeless Services staff, and as you'll see there, we have the Homeless Services personnel. It's a principal planner, as well as an associate planner there, the top line of $275,000 that was transferred in, the $6.3 million for the Brundage Lane Navigation Center, and $450,000 is the Bakersfield Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative contract. So that's a good majority of the costs that have been transferred into the city manager's office. And again, we transferred the homeless services unit into the CMO's office to be able to focus more on addressing homelessness, its impact in real time, establishing essential communication with residents and the city council, and again, to really tackle our one of our number one priorities here with the city. This slide here speaks to the 2 tech services positions that were transferred into the city manager's office, as well as the 2 property positions that finance spoke about being moved into the city manager's office. The technology services positions, just looking at salaries and benefits alone, and some costs for furniture and equipment for that staffing is $220,000 that was transferred in. Property management is about $250,000 plus $56,000 to $60,000 of the general fund costs. There is for operational. It's not entirely salaries there. So again, these 4 positions were transferred into the city manager's office. Technology services to have communication more closely managed by the city manager's office to provide greater access and information to city residents. Real property staff, again, also transferred into the city manager's office to closely work with Assistant City Manager Hallen and his staff to look strategically for properties that the city could possibly acquire, rehab, or utilize for our own services. The positions that the city manager's office is requesting, again, this is also going back to finances presentation, financial services presentation, which he spoke about city manager's office taking on the enterprise resource planning, staffing to really ensure that this Oracle enterprise resource planning is a success. And what we're thinking this will take is from top down. We have a senior budget analyst the senior budget analyst isn't necessarily focused only on Oracle, but it's more citywide for budgeting purposes budget book preparation, best practice applications, creating budget instructions, since we're going from an old system that's been around since 1995. So everything is really changing, and in order to ensure that this is a success moving forward and that the processes and the procedures are well documented, that's what the senior budget analyst would do. The fiscal and administrative services officer and the administrative analyst would really be targeted positions for the Oracle enterprise system, and they would be more focused on assisting with the various modules that are going into Oracle, which is cash management, financials, human capital management, utility billing, time and labor software. So as Ms. Tenter mentioned, all these different modules and implementation of this new Oracle system, enterprise system, takes a tremendous amount of time, tremendous amount of effort, hours, data analysis. So by having these 2 positions coming on board, we have a more successful implementation of the Oracle system. And the last position you see there, the Fiscal and Administrative Analyst 1, that is actually to provide assistance to the Homeless Services Unit and the Cal VIP staff to do some grant management of their huge number of grants and projects that they manage. Homeless Services, and speaking to Nina, our Homeless Services principal, she mentioned that they have they have a total of 51 projects with over $70 million to manage. So being that they don't have a financial person assisting them in the process, in the grant management process, that's what this person would assist with, as well as the Cal VIP. The Cal VIP working with their grants that they have received in recent years from the State Department of Corrections. So total requests there, salaries, benefits, and one-time costs would be $473,500. Again, these are the new positions requests that I've briefly mentioned right now and what they would be doing. Again, these first two would be focused on the Oracle Enterprise system. These two positions here, again, as I mentioned, one would be the budget analyst focused on budgeting, reporting, annual monitoring of expenses, procurement process, and the top one would be basically the grant analyst for the Cal VIP and the Homeless Services Unit. City Clerk's Office, being that the council works with Clerk's Office on a regular basis, you see the tremendous amount of work that they do, maintaining and preserving the city's records for the city, council reports, agendas, ensuring that we comply with all applicable laws and regulations, as well as working with the city manager's office for a smooth operation. Risk management. Our risk management department promotes the safety and well-being of our city employees, manages various programs, workers' compensation, property claims, citywide insurance, safety committee, wellness initiatives, responding to claims filed against the city, working with the city attorney's office, city manager's office. Risk management budget overview. Again, throughout the budget presentations here by department staff, they'll be continuing to mention the risk management increases in costs. As you can see there, the departmental budget difference, which is the blue, going from last year, from 22-23 fiscal year of $22.7 million to fiscal year 23-24 department rates of $30 million. And the breakdown of that $30 million is $5.4 million for general fund, $700,000 for non-general fund, and $1.2 million for PSVS. Workers' compensation claims history, some data provided by our risk management department here, showing some history on claims, open claims, COVID, year over year. Our next slide here is focused on our city youth jobs and programs. In 2022, City Bakersfield received a $5.3 million grant allocation from the state of California to develop a youth jobs program, which I think has been very successful here, serving 399 youth throughout 4 programs. Currently, we have 18 fellows in our programs in the various departments throughout the city. I have to say for myself, not having a staff member, my fellow has been excellent. She's been amazing. Without her help, I wouldn't be able to focus on other projects, because even this PowerPoint presentation, a lot of this presentation was prepared by her with, through coordination here. So I thank you guys for the City Youth Jobs programs. Public safety and vital services measures, strategic initiatives, programs, projects, and services that currently don't really fit in other departments. City manager's office will take those and work with the various departments to ensure that the successful completion of these programs and projects. For instance, we have the prevention programming, which is a $500,000 PSVS request for additional prevention programming funds for the that'll be managed by the Cal VIP staff. That's focused on ongoing efforts to complement gun violence intervention programs, working with community-based organizations. We have the $5 million affordable housing program request to continue to fund and to reduce homelessness in the city, to continue to invest in affordable housing programs, supporting the construction of new affordable housing units, housing services for those that are seeking these services. Some more PSVS requests that have been presented to the Oversight Committee. We have the Community Event Fund for $150,000, which is increasing community event policy to establish criteria and continue contributing to the quality of life and vibrancy of the city. Some additional grant writing, contract assistance funds to continue to seek out grant opportunities and dollars that could be brought back to our community for our various programmatic needs and services. The Model of Excellence program that provides resources and really works with our departments that could use some additional guidance and information on how to better serve other interdepartments as well as the community. Increase our efforts, such as workflows, customer service, and enhancements of services provided to the public. This slide here is the fiscal year 23-24 one-time general funds slide, which I'll actually pass over to Assistant City Manager Gary Hallen so he can speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. So I'll cover the last two slides. This relates to City Manager Clegg's presentation to the council on April 26, where there was a $10 million gap that was presented at that presentation. So as we're looking at creative ways to be able to fill that gap, we're looking at these projects, and we'll have another slide that shows another 400,000. So we've got 8 million of that gap presented to you here, where we're shifting from PSVS into general fund, but these projects can be funded with ARPA and TOT. So that's really the backfill of finding the right color of money that can be funded with these ARPA qualified projects. Some of them will be funded with TOT because they're technically not ARPA qualified, but several of them fit into that ARPA bucket. So this is really the right revenue for solving part of that gap issue. So the next slide shows the last part of that $8 million gap that we're trying to fill. So I think that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. I don't see any requests to speak. Vice Mayor, request. Oh, you didn't. Yeah, 20 minutes. Councilmember Smith has many questions.
Not many, just a couple. The risk management up 6.6 million. What really is that?
Mario, I don't know if you can address that, or do you know?
Again, The huge increase here for risk management goes back to, let me go back to that slide. So if you'll go back to even the 1920 years, 2021 year, 21, 22, if you look at the yellow there, those are our actual end of the year costs. So we were budgeting at 13.8 million in 1920 when the end result was 22.4 million. 2021, 15.9 million versus 23.9 million, the actual. You know, same thing, 21, 22. We were at 18.8 million versus 25.8 million. This year, you know, again, based on the increase in rates, increase in workers' compensation, property claims, citywide insurance, actuarial reports provided by experts to the city that the city works closely with, really estimating these huge increase in costs. You know, if we continue to budget the way we were doing it in 1920, 2021, we're going to be at the end of the year, you know, if we budget at 20 million and our end result is 35 or 32 million, you know, it continues to put us in trouble versus really budgeting at a rate that's more in line with what the experts are providing us, what the market is providing us, what the rates are showing us that we're currently expected to have. That's what we're currently expected to be paying out this year.
I see Gina in the back. Is there anything further that you want to add to address Councilmember Smith's question?
No problem. Hi, Gina Covey, risk manager for the city. So just to give a little snapshot, the insurance market is really hardening in the state of California. So all of our rates for workers' comp, for property, for liability are increasing. And with us hiring new employees as well, that makes our program grow. On top of that, we need to improve our funding status in the self-insurance fund. So you'll notice that we were spending more than we were actually putting into the fund. So we are, through the actuarial reports that Mario referenced, we are looking at coming from expected funding up to what is acceptable, which would be 70% confidence level. So we're trying to move that pendulum so that we have adequate funding in that fund.
So we've really been short last 4 years.
Yes, even longer. So in 2008, when we started having financial downturn at that time, we started having flat rates for some of those programs so that we could pass that savings on to the departments. But we're really in a position now where we need to recover in that self-insurance fund and start funding more appropriately.
So our self-insurance fund has been going down. We've been spending.
Absolutely, it has.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Freeman.
A couple of questions. We want a new senior budget analyst. Who has been doing, which I think you explained, to collect all the budgets, help organize. I didn't get the impression this was a result of the new software. So who's been doing that up until now?
The budgeting?
No, pulling the budget together. That's what you said the senior budget analyst was going to be doing. I wondered who has been doing that function?
Yeah, actually, I'm the budget officer, and prior to me, it was the assistant city manager that was putting the budget together. I'm assuming that was prior to me coming on board here with the city. I'm assuming he was getting assistance from, you know, other staff within the city manager's office. Since I've been the budget officer now for 1 year and 4 months, and I work closely with, so I'm packaging up the budget, working closely with our finance director, working closely with City Manager Clegg and other staff that's helped us out. For instance, our budget book used to be compiled by one of the assistant to the city manager positions, and she's no longer with the city, so that again gets put on me to do.
So that used to be done in the city manager's office, but it wasn't done by you. There was somebody there doing it, and that person's not there anymore.
Prior to me, it was the assistant city manager.
But we don't have, but we have several assistant city managers, but none of them are tasked with that.
They're no longer doing the budgeting piece. So
Okay, they're freed up to do other things, I guess.
Yes. So the budget office, the budget analyst would really provide me with a tremendous amount of support to prepare the budget book, to compile and coordinate the budgeting efforts, to analyze the departmental budgets that are submitted to the city manager's office for review and approval, all the personnel requests that are submitted to the city manager's office.
Someone else is doing it, and somebody has to do it, so
Yeah.
we have a new position. And jumping quickly, the administrative analyst for the homeless shelter, is it for the homeless shelter spending, that no one has been looking at the spending in the homeless shelter
Yeah, I'll speak to
previously?
that one.
Kind of what would that person do that nobody's doing now?
Actually, since the homeless services unit was transferred into the city manager's office, the city manager's office used to be, I don't know if small would be the case, but since, technology service has been transferred out of the city manager's office, human resources has been transferred out, there really isn't financial staff within the city manager's office there. So this fiscal and administrative analyst would now take on the duties, the grant management and administration duties that came along with the homeless services staff that was brought into the city manager's office, as well as the creation of the Calvet program that is now in the city manager's office, which was previously managed, a portion of it was managed in the police department's office, which now is in the city manager's office. So we're still currently, both of these divisions or small staffing are currently receiving assistance, financial assistance from the Economic and Community Development Principal Planner to do these duties in addition to her current duties. So this would put one person focused on grant management and administration duties there with the city manager's office.
And then the other two positions, I wasn't clear, but it sounded like they're entirely the result of the new software program. And are these permanent positions? It sounded like, just to make sure they work right, there's an awful lot of work. And is two positions, is what I got the impression was so to sharpshoot this, all the problems that will occur with the new software program. And those aren't in the IT department anywhere. I'm trying to figure out why they're in the city manager's office when they're really, the way you describe them, trying to make this gigantic new software program work.
Absolutely. The fiscal and administrative services officer and the administrative analyst would really be key personnel in the coordination efforts of this new Oracle system. Tech services is great in the technology aspects of providing technology that runs efficiently and works, for staffing throughout the city. But these two staff members would be more administrative and fiscal positions that would understand and know the fiscal processes of how the system should work, where costing should be posted, where personnel belongs, do data analysis, do data reporting. With this new system, we're no longer going to be able to use Cognos reporting. We're now going to use Oracle reporting, which again is going to require somebody at a higher, more expert level that will be able to create these specialized reports within the Oracle system that then they'll be also able to train others throughout the various departments.
This is a kind of a techie person who can
write
reports. They've been doing a lot of reformatting, writing reports for management using the data from the new system, and I guess my question is, because we don't have the reports now, we have a lot of data coming in, and someone has to write the management reports to use the data. Is that
For sure.
is that right?
Yeah, currently we do have a Cognos business intelligence reporting, but it hasn't really been used. And again, we're working with a very old system. Going into this new system, we're going to get a great enterprise resource planning system software, but it's still going to require somebody to create reports from that data, or to know the different modules within this new enterprise resource planning system.
I do
Yeah.
It
Understand
sounds
where
like the new system actually is more efficient, but it costs us more money. Every
It
time
costs
you
more
do a
money.
system, somehow
it'll create more beautiful reports.
Yeah.
It'll give you great data, but
the new
somebody
efficiency
still
always
has
costs
to.
more money. Has anybody noticed that?
Somebody still has to select all the proper data, be able to train others, be able to
Yeah.
create.
No, I know how it works. I put into these systems in, and you're getting, a trillion bytes of new data, and someone has to put it in management form to use it. And I think that's what you're describing here.
Mr. McKeegan might be able to shed some light on that, Councilmember Freeman.
And I'll just, before Mr. McKeegan speaks, I'll just also say that the city manager's office is to support departments. That's one of the major functions, is we want the departments to be able to solve some of their own problems, but we need the technical, analytical expertise to help them see here's where this new enterprise system can help you solve some of these problems, and with additional reports and analysis that can be more supportive of helping the departments get to the end of the road.
And I understand, it wouldn't be fair to expect the police department to have the expertise to do all this. I understand. I guess my question was, why does it take two people? Is there a rationale for two new people instead of just one new person?
Sure. Council member, through the mayor. Sorry, I had I had a meeting with my team, so I had a wardrobe change. So excuse my outfit.
It's Spirit Week.
So basically, what this group is really starting is with a new ERP. Just so you understand it, there is a change management process that goes across the whole city. So what we need to do is we build, and this is a standard practice. We've talked to other entities that integrated an Oracle system. They really build a management group that rebuilds processes. It's not just about reports. It's about changing processes, dealing with changes that are needed as we progress. So they actually build an ERP team. It's not really led by the TS or IT group, because it's not about software programming. It's about process management. So when we build this is the sort of the first phase of this process is hiring these individuals to really look at our processes, look at our current, or I should say lack of, procedures manuals, and really build a process all the way to the end, and then manage that as we go. As new needs come up, as new reports are necessary, we look at that and then move forward with this staff as sort of an oversight group, as Assistant City Manager Hallen
Just
mentioned.
one question. That sounds like a fairly sophisticated task that would take preferably a lot of experience, having done this before. But we've chosen to bring two people in who aren't that highly paid looking at this, as opposed to a consultant or someone who might bring more resources and expertise in to help us. This is a pretty complicated thing. I'm just wondering, why did we not go the consulting route and are hiring two people who won't be probably as high level as a consultant would have been?
Well, I agree. It will be a technical individual. The hope is that we can find individuals that also can really understand city operations and really dive deep into the city operations and recognize the needs of all departments, from technology services to public works, and how that ERP system will then marry with their procedures. So the hope is that they will not just be a consultant that just kind of hits a specific task and then moves on. They'll be in there and really moving forward with continual process improvement. So they'll build that necessary capacity as they move into the system, this new system group.
Okay. No. Kind of a judgment call. I understand. I understand the
self-insurance fund. A question about the chart that showed all of the open claims on workers' comp. And there's always a huge number of open claims, it looks like. It's like we settle, new claims are small, but open claims, do they just stay open forever? I mean, is there always this huge backlog and that it makes multiple years to get rid of the claims?
Yeah, I can speak to my, I could say, ground floor knowledge of this process, but yes, the claims stay open until they go through the process to basically negotiate and for example, workers' comp, it takes time for the various medical procedures to get analyzed and eventually they come off over time, but in a lot of cases, these individuals are on, we could call the books for workers' comp for many years as we go through the process.
Are most of these people still working or not working while they file their claim in?
I don't know the percentages, but from my understanding, the majority are off work because if it's a large workers' comp claim, they are not able to work, and so they're working through this particular process of maybe eventually be able to come back on, but right now they are not working because there's a lot of medical issues that they need to address.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman.
Go Warriors.
Oh. Okay. Thank you.
Motion to receive and file.
You have a motion? Please cast your votes.
Mayor, we're having an issue with the voting system. Can I conduct a roll call vote?
Sure. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Arias? Councilmember Weir? Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaur? Motion is approved with Council members Arias, Weir, and Kaur absent.
Thank you. And Councilmember Smith, now you have comment.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on my referral on the chronic nuisance in the eminent domain. If we need a project, I would ask the city manager's office or building development services. I know we have a list now of those nuisance properties. If we could map those, then maybe we can work towards the project that works for the city attorney's office.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we stand adjourned at, Councilmember Freeman has a follow-up too.
If it's permitted to direct something to staff, which Councilman Smith just did at this meeting.
He was following up on something he had spoken
Oh, it has to be
earlier.
something dealt with at this meeting?
Well, go ahead.
Okay, anyway, I just wanted, I've talked with the city manager about this, to ask staff to re-examine the wall and fence heights along that back up to public streets. We've been having a lot of inquiries, issues with what's over the wall. Is it vines? Is it something above it? But there's a lot of concern safety. Would you take a new look at those and then report back to us if they need some amendments? Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Are there any other requests? With that, we stand adjourned at 4:07. Thank you, everyone.